Hey guys, how all of you beautiful people are doing? And yes, this is a new series, Accidental Gamer Hero. I accidentally saved the world and was granted 3 wishes when I died. Easy. First wish to reincarnate in the Naruto universe, and second is to reincarnate with the gamer ability. Third wish, I'll save it for later. /OC. So let's start without any delay. The first week of the academy were, for the lack of a better word, boring, as it focused entirely on theory. Iruka had spent the past 5 days going through some general knowledge of the world, such as some basic information about the elemental nations, and some sanitized, PG-rated, explanation about the purpose of Shinobi and Shinobi villages. We were shown the respective symbols of the various hidden villages and warned to steer clear of anyone bearing their sigil without the presence of any other adults. We have yet to even begin any form of physical training, as the teacher obviously wanted to facilitate the entire process by getting us familiar with the concept of a shinobi and the reasons for their existence. The entire spiel sounded vaguely propaganda-ish, as it painted Konoha in a very good light while at the same time vilifying other shinobi villages, as though every other foreign ninja were responsible for all that was bad in the world while Konoha existed to protect the innocents from them. It sounded like some bovine excrement to me, but I just listened silently to the lecture since I was looking forward to receiving some int points for staying attentive in class. Even though Iruka had briefly touched on some of the less pleasant duties of a shinobi, he repeatedly emphasized that what they did and what we might do in the future was all for some abstract conception of a greater good. I saw the lecture for what it was: subtle, mental conditioning to instill the younger generation with loyalty to the village and a semblance of justification for the evils we would commit for the sake of our village. I understood where the village was coming from: get them while they're young, right? But I saw through the charade naturally, and I was confident every other veteran shinobi who have performed some nasty acts in the name of Konoha saw through it too. There was a reason why missing nins existed after all, not because they were not willing to commit evil for their village, but because they could not stand the hypocrisy and self-important righteousness of their leaders. While I had no issue with that, since I knew what I was getting into when I picked this universe to reincarnate into, it wasn't my place to shatter the rose-tinted glasses the other students had on shinobi life. But I was excited for today, as Iruka had announced the previous week we were going to be going through some exercises for him to evaluate our general fitness and skill level and thus know which students, such as the civilian-born ones, needed more attention and guidance. We were ushered into the academy training ground, significantly larger than the one at the student dormitory I was living in, and saw a blue-haired Chunin wearing a bandana that doubled as a forehead protector waiting for us on the fields. I recognized him as Mitsuki, the traitor who would eventually reveal Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki to him and then try to kill him. Keeping my face impassive, Iruka stood before us and spoke. Today we will be testing your general competencies. How? Your first activity will be running around the track twice, which adds up to a distance of 1 kilometer, and you will be timed. Next, will be a shuriken jutsu test. You simply have to try and hit the target with some shuriken. Following that, you will be split into pairs and engage in a mock duel for us to identify your areas of improvement. Of course, you don't have to worry about performing well. We know you have only just started the academy and some of you might have never exercised or ever picked up a shuriken before. You just need to try your best and that will be enough. However, you should know that if we see that you aren't putting in your best efforts, he paused to look at some of the lazy boys he have since identified, you will participate in some, how you say, rehabilitative supplementary classes after school. The class groaned at that. Hey, it's for your own good. Ah, Mitsuki. Why don't you introduce yourself? At that, the blue-haired Chunin who was standing silently behind Iruka stepped up. Sure. Hello everyone, you can call me Mitsuki-sensei. Like your Iruka-sensei, I am also a Chunin of Konoha. I have just returned from active duty and will soon be starting as an instructor here. For today I will be temporarily helping Iruka-sensei out as an assistant, but after some time I will be joining full-time. With the introduction done, Iruka turned to Mitsuki. As we discussed earlier, help me time the class while I keep watch over them when they are running. As the two Chunin instructors discussed the logistics, the class broke out in subdued whispers amongst themselves. Any, Shinji-kun, you'll definitely do well since you train so much. Kaori nudged me excitedly. I'll do okay, I guess. I replied dispassionately. I'm definitely going to be the fastest, Datbeo. Our conversation was interrupted by a boisterous scream that had me recoiling, from Naruto, who had appeared next to us without my notice. Kaori looked affronted on my behalf. No way, Shinji-kun is definitely going to be faster than you. Nah. Yaha. Naruto stuck out his tongue, blew a raspberry that only incensed Kaori even further, while I just looked away, embarrassed. Their exchange had drawn the attention from the rest of the class and I refused to be a part of the childish debate. Too loud, this is so troublesome. I just want to sleep. Shikamaru lazily yawned out while his childhood friend, Choji, patted his back comfortingly. I know. I hate running too. I'm not built for running. Shikamaru idly glanced at his friend. Your self-awareness is troublesome too. The chubby Akimichi just smiled in response. All right, listen up everyone. Iruka clapped to get our attention. You will be running in batches of 6, so there should be 7 groups of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You guys will be group 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You will be group 2. As Iruka was splitting up the class, I received a quest notification. Finally. It was the first quest created since I joined the academy, as most of my time was mainly taken up by classes which yielded no EXP, and my free time was spent training up my current repertoire of skills. As such, my EXP bar had been stagnating since the first day of school. Quest alert. Prove yourself. Participate in the proficiency test. Finish the run in under 10 minutes. Bonus, finish the run in under 8 minutes. Bonus, finish the run in under 6 minutes. Achieve 50% accuracy for the Shuriken Jutsu test. Bonus, achieve 80% accuracy. Bonus, achieve 100% accuracy. Defeat your opponent in the spa. Bonus, win without taking damage. Bonus, knock out your opponent. Rewards. Plus 150 EXP. Plus 100 EXP for each bonus objective cleared. Plus 5 to char if all bonus objectives cleared. Rep increased with Rookie 9. Rep increased with Yumino Iruka. Rep increased with Mitsuki. Rep significantly increased with Kaori. Failure. Rep decreased with everyone in Konoha. Accept. Y/N. I choked at the quest failure punishment, but other than that, the other objectives seemed reasonable. The running time limit was reasonable for a group of 8-year-old children, albeit Shinobi in training children. Whereas the Shuriken Jutsu test might have phased me weeks ago, but now that my corresponding Shuriken Jutsu skill level was at level 5, which boosted my accuracy by 50%, I was confident I could handle the test without issue. The only challenge I felt apprehension towards was defeating my opponent in the spa, my concern being the likelihood that I might be paired with Sajuk, who was apparently stronger than me, according to the observe status. After I accepted the quest, I found myself grouped together with Kiba, Naruto and 3 other low-profile students. It appeared that the groups were organized based on gender, as all the girls were in their own groups, and similarly for the boys. Right, everyone, start stretching first. Do it properly or you will hurt yourself. Mitsuki, could you show them how? Soon the students started their runs group by group. Mine was the second group, and we got ready to begin as the first group was finishing up. Taking our places at the starting line, Naruto turned to me grinning, "Get ready, 'cause I'm about to leave you in the dust." His bluntness lacked any genuine hostility, and only contained friendly competitiveness. I smiled in response, "You're welcome to try." Naruto seemed happy I returned his challenge with a jab of my own, but Kiba cut him off, "Ha! Neither of you are going to hold a candle to me. We in Yuzuka are known for our speed." I noticed that he did not have Akamaru with him yet, perhaps the pup had not been born yet. Same group, this will be fun. The 2 noisiest academy students were bickering when Iruka interrupted, "Group 2. Get ready. On my mark." They stopped their dispute and we readied ourselves. Don't fall behind too much or they might just kick you out of the academy. Kiba taunted towards Naruto. But before the blonde could shoot back with his own, Iruka shouted, "Get set, and go." All of us immediately shot forwards, except Naruto, who had been taken aback but desperately sprinted to catch up to us. Running was not an issue for me. I had been doing so for the past month, ever since I found the book on basic body conditioning and received the quest to level it up. 1 kilometer was peanuts for me, as I ran way more than that long distance to train myself. Besides, I was sure in my class, only Naruto would be able to keep up with me for a long distance run, because my gamer's body let me fully recover my exhaustion with just a 30-minute rest. And while I never did time myself, 10 minutes shouldn't be a problem. Next to me Kiba similarly ran without an issue, but I could feel him distinctly aware that I was keeping pace with him and he was intending to speed up. Behind us, the 3 other boys and Naruto struggled to catch up, but the 2 of us in the lead were slowly picking up the pace. While I wasn't interested in competing with the Inuzuka, I was aiming to complete the bonus objectives. With a deep intake of air, I charged forward, intending to go as fast as I could reasonably sustain for the entirety of the run. Kiba was shocked at my sudden increase in speed but narrowed his eyes and pushed himself to keep up. I could hear from afar Kaori cheering for me, screaming, "Ganbat Shinji-kun! You can do it!" Poor girl was slowly undergoing her transformation into a full-fledged fangirl ha. 400 meters in, I could feel my legs aching as my short, 8-year-old legs kept a constant momentum. My lungs were beginning to burn as well, begging for more oxygen. But I was comfortably in the lead, with Kiba just 2 arms length behind and Naruto trailing behind him. As I neared the end of the run, I decided to push myself for a last burst of energy and sprinted past the finish line. Mitsuki, who was holding a stopwatch, gave me my timing as I went past him, 6 minutes 18 seconds. Good job. Don't sit down even if you're tired. Jog on the spot to maintain your heart rate. Heeding his advice, I slowed my sprint down to a brisk stroll, taking a moment to pant for air, and looked back to see Kiba sprint past the finish line before collapsing on the ground, out of breath. 6 minutes 42 seconds. Well done. Don't lay down. Stay standing and walk around or you might get puke. Mitsuki chided before turning back to the other runners. I can't. My legs are jelly. Kiba wheezed on the ground, his chest sinking and rising in an exaggerated motion. Chuckling, I walked over to him and put my hand out. Come on, get up. Or else the others are going to trip on you. Kiba wearily turned to me. It's fine, I can't stand any more. I shook my head amusedly. Yeah, don't puke on me, I said as I reached down to pull him up and lifted his arm around my shoulders, walking him off the running track. Thanks. You are crazy fast, you know that. I nodded. I like running. I run a lot. Although my high DEX stats sure helped very much as well. Oh yeah. I run lots too, we should run together sometime, Kiba asked, as I sat him down with the other students from the first group that ran before us. Sure, I usually run at the public training ground near the stadium. I turned back towards the track. Naruto had just finished, looking only slightly winded. His issue wasn't stamina, but his speed and short legs were holding him back. After every other student were done with their respective runs, we were released for lunch break, which I had spent with Kaori and Kiba, who were both, in their own ways, competing for my attention. While Kaori had initially been somewhat wary of the loud-mouthed Inuzuka and his brash and blunt demeanor, she relented when she saw me frown. I was much more interested in getting to know and strike up a friendship with one of the rookie 9 than the girl. Kiba spent the time talking about himself and his clan, and I listened with interest, eyeing with understanding when he mentioned he was going to be partnered with a Ninken as soon as the next batch of pups were delivered. We also compared some notes on our physical training regimen, mine a word-for-word routine from the basic body conditioning guidebook, while his was personalized and Inuzuka clan-specific. He explained that since his clan's fighting style leaned towards speed and at times fighting on all fours, their training methods revolved around developing an almost animalistic way of moving. Kaori, not one for training herself, could only listen on quietly, being unable to contribute much to the conversation, and only interjecting when she scoffed at the Inuzuka clan's fighting style. Which of course ticked off the air of the very clan she just insulted to launch into a verbal tirade that naturally sparked a bickering reminiscent of her argument with Naruto earlier. I could only sigh disapprovingly as I considered the merits of continuing to hang out with her versus the damage she was doing to my reputation by association. I couldn't stop myself from assessing the value of any public relationship or friendship that I had. It was how I was raised. Since I was young, I had always been taught to only befriend people of a certain family background and judge those around me primarily by how I could benefit from them. It was a habit I was trying to kick and constantly reminded myself I was no longer under the domineering umbrella of my family, but old habits and all that. When the lunch break ended, we gathered back at the academy training ground and was led to the throwing range where 6 wood panels, presumably our targets, and a corresponding number of shuriken sets had been set up for us. For ease of organization, stay with the group that you had been running with, Iruka announced. For this portion of the test, you have to try and hit the targets by throwing the shuriken at them. It is only counted as a hit if the shuriken lands and sticks into the wood. If you hit it but it fails to stick, it won't count. Each of you will get 10 tries. Reminder, no pressure trying to land all of the shuriken. It's perfectly fine even if none hits. This exercise is not to demean you, it is for us to see how to best train every one of you into great shinobi. Some of the students who were initially worried calmed down slightly, but was still slightly apprehensive. But before we begin, we will first show you how to hold the shuriken properly and how to throw them towards where you're aiming. Mitsuki, if you would. The blue-haired Chunin stepped up, holding the four-pointed throwing star at us. He slowly demonstrated where to grip the shuriken, and went through the motions of actually throwing it, while Iruka explained to us. We were then given the opportunity to practice with wooden throwing stars while the instructors went around correcting the students' grip and shuriken jutsu form. After some time, we broke into our groups to begin the exercise. Soon, the first group, which incidentally had Sasuke and Shino amongst their members, started launching shuriken at their targets. Both of the clan members evidently had plenty of practice before entering the academy as they both achieved perfect scores. To be fair, the wood panels were rather wide, and we were supposed to throw them from a distance of 10 meters. So it would instead be pretty difficult for anyone with some training to miss any. The other kids in their group, even ones without any prior training at all, were able to land at least 2 or 3, by chance or otherwise, with the rest either flying way off or deflected off the stationary targets. My group went next after the students collected and handed the shuriken to us. I took a moment to fiddle with the shuriken. The first time I had held an actually sharpened weapon was when Hiroki loaned me his to train with when my 3 senpais were tutoring me in shuriken jutsu. After a moment of amusing myself with the throwing star, I readied my stance and cocked back my throwing arm. Once Iruka gave the go-ahead, I flung the shuriken and hit it dead center. I smirked, but reminded myself it wasn't such a great feat since the distance was shorter than what I usually practiced with, but aim small, miss small, right? After my first shuriken landed, I could again hear Kaori cheering for me from the back. I suppressed a groan. I was getting kind of embarrassed by her antics. It wasn't even flattering since she was literally a 7-year-old child. Or 8-year-old, I couldn't remember if her birthday had gone by yet. Regardless, I consecutively landed all 10 of the shuriken, although only 3 hit dead center. Once done, I turned to examine Kiba's and Naruto's progress. Kiba had performed the worst of the clan heirs so far, only landing 7 of the 10 shuriken provided. One hit too shallow and fell from the target after a moment, the second barely grazed the edge of the target but still failed to hit the mark, and the last unluckily hit one of the embedded shuriken and bounced off with a large ding. Naruto on the other hand did as badly as the civilian kids, only hitting 3 but had the cheek to complain loudly that there must have been something wrong with the shuriken or something. Which shouldn't have been the case since Shino had been using the same set of throwing stars before the blonde. The results of the rest of the groups remained somewhat consistent, although there was one girl in the last group who failed to land a single shuriken on the target and as a result broke down crying. It was odd to remember that although we were learning how to become deadly ninja, these were still a bunch of 8-year-old children who undoubtedly still acted like children at times. Iruka had motioned for Mitsuki to comfort the girl before tallying our scores. He smiled widely once he was done before announcing the end of the shuriken jutsu exercise and praised the ones who managed to land quite a few shuriken, especially so for those who were able to get a perfect score, namely, Sasuke, Shino, Shikamaru, Hinata and yours truly. Shikamaru had been exceptionally motivated to avoid the supplementary after-class lessons. The rest of the clan heirs mostly managed 8s and 9s, while Choji had scored the worst with only 6 shuriken embedded in his target. Once the girl stopped crying, we returned back to the training grounds. For the final exercise, like I mentioned at the start, we will be pairing up every student and you will be engaging in a mock duel with each other. We understand that there will be many of you who have never been taught how to fight or been in one before. And that is perfectly fine. You were not expected to have learned it prior to the academy. But you can also treat this exercise as a wake-up call. Being a shinobi means you will at times have to get your hands dirty and find yourself fighting enemies. Not knowing how to fight properly will only get yourself injured, or worse. Iruka once again announced. Before adding a disclaimer, you are not expected to perform admirably, nor are you expected to display brilliant taijutsu. The purpose of this exercise is not for us to evaluate your fighting styles, but more towards letting us get a better sense of things like your reflexes, instinct and ability to react in a fight. So don't worry about winning or losing. Just do your best and you'll be fine. The instructor fished out a piece of paper from his pocket and unrolled them. He scanned it for a moment before speaking. Now all of you take a seat on the ground. When I call out your name and your sparring partner, stand up and let each other know who you are, then move over here in your pairs. Form a straight line and that will be the order of your mock duels. First pair, Aburame Shino and Inuzuka Kiba. As Iruka called out the pairings, it was evident that they had intentionally paired up the clan members together while the clanless, shinobi-born students were partnered, and similarly for the civilian-born students. I myself was paired with a student who came from a civilian background. The only exception was Sasuke, who was paired with Naruto, which was unfortunate for the blonde, who immediately exclaimed he was going to kick his ass. Which the Uchiha did not receive as light-heartedly as I previously did, immediately scowling. I wasn't sure whether that particular pairing, putting Naruto up against the strongest of the batch, was an intentional measure by either Iruka or Mitsuki. Now that you are in your pairs, you can start stretching first to warm up your bodies like how we taught you in the morning. While doing so, listen up. The rules are simple: no eye gouging, no scratching, stop attacking when your opponent is on the ground, and for the boys, no hitting below the belt. Your goal is to knock down your sparring partner. Do it 3 times, and you win. You are allowed to yield at any point of the fight if you don't feel like carrying on, but try your best first before doing so. You are allowed to submit your opponent with any jujutsu holds if you know how to, but you have to release them once they yield or tap out. There shouldn't be any hard feelings after the duel regardless if you win or lose. Whatever happens in the ring, leave it in there once the fight is over. Remember, this exercise is for training purposes only. Do not walk away from this nursing a grudge if you lose, nor should you get cocky and be a bad winner if you win. Iruka paused, then put on a stern look. Mitsuki and I will be refereeing while 2 pairs fight concurrently. If you break the rules, you will be punished. If we notice any excessive cruelty, you will be punished. I am not telling you to hold back, but ruthlessness should be directed at the enemies outside these walls, not towards our fellow Konoha comrades within. Any questions? One girl put up her hands. Sensei, is there a time limit or do we just keep going until one of us wins? There usually isn't, but for this exercise we will call off the fight once we have gathered what we need to see. Iruka responded. Anyone else? No. Then the first pair, Shino and Kiba, go to Mitsuki-sensei. The second pair, Shikamaru and Choji, come to me. The rest of you pay attention and try to learn from the duels while you are waiting for your turn. The 2 pairs went over their respective instructors, who moved them towards some distance apart and quickly went over the rules with them again. The clan members were no stranger to the procedure, even if Shikamaru looked as lethargic as could be while Choji seemed reluctant to hurt his friend. On the other side, Kiba and Shino were already adopting their respective families' fighting stances. After a moment of silence, both Iruka and Mitsuki called out at the same time, signaling the start of their fights. Kiba immediately rushed towards Shino, swiping and swinging with a controlled ferocity. But the cold and calculating Aburam was patient with his defense and seemed to have been expecting the Inuzuka to come out swinging. They quickly exchanged blows with Kiba on the offensive while Shino calmly deflecting the hits that he could and absorbing the ones he couldn't. A well-placed kick landed on Kiba's thigh, but he was not deterred as he managed to slip past Shino's defense and threw a punch at the opening. However, it had been a trap laid out by Shino as he managed to grab the outstretched arm and pull him off balance while simultaneously tripping the Inuzuka and throwing him to the ground. 1-0, Shino. Don't fall for obvious openings, Kiba. Kiba growled as he picked himself up. While Kiba and Shino's spar was firing up, the situation with Shikamaru and Choji was the exact opposite. They had been exchanging moves half-heartedly from the beginning, and it was obvious they were both just going through the motions while play-acting. Iruka had been annoyed but kept watching. However, when the lazy Nara accidentally took an unenthusiastic punch and fell to the ground in an exaggerated motion, the instructor's temper flared. Boy! Take this seriously, Shikamaru. And Choji. Don't just go along with it. Shikamaru merely turned to the Chunin while still laying on the ground and muttered, troublesome. What was that? Did you say you want to stay back after class for supplementary lessons? The Nara flinched and withheld a sigh. He slowly pulled himself up and dusted off his trousers. Can't help it, I guess. Choji, you don't have to hold back. It's fine. His friend squirmed. Is that okay? I don't want to hurt you though. Shikamaru lazily waved him off. It's fine. Staying back after class would hurt even more. Choji still looked unsure, but you're my friend. If you win, I will get you a bag of chips. The Akimichi's eyes sharpened. Shikamaru. Prepare yourself. I'm going all out. I sat with my sparring partner at the edge of the training ground, watching the fights while waiting for my turn. We barely exchanged any words, both engrossed in the spectacle before us. Quite a few duels have gone by now, with the most brutal one being with Sasuke and Naruto. The Jinchuriki had charged forward immediately when the fight began, throwing a wild haymaker, but had been cleanly countered by Sasuke with a right hook of his own, knocking him down. Not waiting for Mitsuki to resume the match, Naruto ran right at Sasuke again, as though expecting a different outcome with the same method. The Uchiha merely sidestepped the punch and ferociously buried his fist into Naruto's gut that took him down for the second time. If there was one thing that Naruto wasn't, it was a quitter. Any other student might have already tapped out at that point, kneeling and holding their abdomen in pain. But not him. The third time, Naruto tried a different tactic rather than just to rush and hope for the best. Instead, he rushed and went down low instead, intending to tackle his opponent. But Sasuke seemed to either have anticipated this move or were able to react instinctively as he too ran forward and launched a flying knee that smashed directly into Naruto's face. The simultaneous force from his jump as well as Naruto's momentum from his lunge sent the blonde flying back, blood leaking from his nose reminiscent of a future victim of his Oroku no Jutsu. Naruto could sure take a blow, however, as he was only down for the count for a few moments before snapping back up yelling how that knee was cheating or something along those lines. But Sasuke couldn't care less, vindicated from the boisterous blonde's earlier proclamation. The rest of the fights went as I would have expected, childish slap fighting or roughly tumbling in an entangled mess on the ground. I was unsure of the wisdom behind the instructor's decision to pit untrained students against each other. The so-called fights would have been pathetic had they not been 8-year-old children. They should have at least been through the academy-style taijutsu first before engaging in any duels. Ikai Shinji and Tanaka Shuichi. Iruka called out as I hopped to attention. It was finally our turn. He beckoned us forward and quickly rattled off the rules he had mentioned previously. When we both affirmed our understanding, he motioned for us to take our places. I settled into the Konoha Academy Taijutsu stance, not prompting any curious looks from Iruka as a number of other students similarly learned it from somewhere before entering the academy. My opponent, on the other hand, had no such experience and clumsily held his hands up. This was going to be a cakewalk. I reminded myself of the bonus objectives of the assigned quest, which were to win without taking any damage and to knock out my opponent. I hesitated to full-on knock the poor guy out, as no one else had done so yet, and the kid didn't even have the slightest idea what he was doing. Once again I questioned our instructor's decision. 100 EXP or mercy, 100 EXP or mercy. Decisions. On one hand, I didn't really want to hurt my opponent too badly, and on the other, 100 EXP and I might win the respect of some of my classmates with a show of strength. While I struggled over the dilemma in my head, Iruka turned to both of us and drew his hand up. Ready. He chopped his arm down. Hajime. I watched the kid, Shuichi, take a few apprehensive steps towards me as I was left without any more time to consider my decision. If I was going to do it, I will put the kid out of his misery as mercifully as possible. There, a satisfactory compromise. I ducked under my opponent's amateurish swing and jumped back up with a forceful uppercut while activating Power Strike. My fist, empowered with the skill, crashed into his chin, launching his small body flying up lightly before he came back down and collapsed like a bag of rocks. I immediately yelled out in faux shock and went down on a knee to examine the boy while using Observe to check his status. Oh crap. I think I might have hit too hard. Are you okay, man? Tanaka Shuichi LV4. HP 410/720. CP 950/950. Status unconscious. Holy shit, the kid's almost half dead. I turned towards Iruka, who was running towards us. Iruka-sensei, I think he fell asleep. Move aside. Shuichi. Can you hear me? Iruka cradled the boy's head while feeling his pulse. Breathing a sigh of relief that he was still breathing, he glared at me. Why did you use so much force? Rep has decreased with Yumino Iruka. I paled, more so at the system notification than Iruka's glare, but you told us not to hold back. And I didn't think he would go down so easily. He looked pretty tough. You're not wrong, but, Sai, just take it as a valuable lesson, and next time, you shouldn't be looking to knock off someone's head just for a spa. The Chunin instructor admitted, but still scolded me. I understand, sensei. Is he going to be okay? I asked, looking with concern at the still unconscious student. Fortunately, he has just passed out. He should be regaining consciousness soon, but I better bring him to the school medic-nin just to be sure. Iruka lifted up the boy, careful to keep his head tilted up to keep the airway open. He turned to Mitsuki, who had stopped the fight he had been supervising when he noticed the commotion. I'm taking him to the school medic-nin, help me take care of the rest of the class. I saw that I had the rapt attention of the student spectators and, against my conscience, decided to display a degree of compassion to win their admiration, as I had always been taught to capitalize on such occasions by my past family. Can I come with you, Iruka-sensei? I feel really bad, and I wouldn't want him to be alone when he wakes up. Iruka's expression softened, but he shook his head. No, you should stay here. I can move faster without you. And don't worry, he won't be alone when he wakes up, the Medicnin will be there taking care of him. All right. I will wait for him to come back to apologize. He smiled warmly at that and nodded. You're a good kid, Shinji. Make sure he knows how sorry you are when he has recovered. With that he sped off while carrying the still motionless Shuichi into an open window of the academy building. When I awkwardly walked back to the rest of the class, feeling slightly guilty for the fight and my actions after, I could see them gazing at me silently, unsure of how to approach the entire incident. I looked down glumly before thankfully Kiba whooped out loud, breaking the silence. Oh my Kami! That was awesome! He swung at you like a whoosh, and you went under with a whoop and then jumped back up with a K-pow. He exclaimed, while mimicking the motions of the fight. Shinji-kun, you were so cool. Kaori similarly gushed, with anime hearts in her eyes. With the dam broken, the rest of the students joined in, crying out and cheering. While I was glad my gambit had paid off, I still felt bad for what I had done. Guys, wait, I feel bad, you know. I didn't mean to hit so hard. And now he is being taken to see a Medicnin, we shouldn't be cheering about it. Although the students agreed, though still smiling at the performance they had just witnessed, Kiba shouted boisterously again, he'll be fine. He's at the Shinobi Academy, what did he think was going to happen? It's just his bad luck to have encountered you and your super punch, to the laughter of the other students. I rubbed the back of my head sheepishly, as I noticed the quest completion alert. Life's good. Quest, prove yourself, completed. Participate in the proficiency test. Finish the run in under 10 minutes, square root. Bonus, finish the run in under 8 minutes, square root. Bonus, finish the run in under 6 minutes, x. Achieve 50% accuracy for the Shuriken Jutsu test, square root. Bonus, achieve 80% accuracy, square root. Bonus, achieve 100% accuracy, square root. Defeat your opponent in the spa, square root. Bonus, win without taking damage, square root. Bonus, knock out your opponent, square root. Rewards. Plus 150 EXP. Plus 500 EXP for bonus objectives cleared. Rep increased with Rookie 9. Rep increased with Yumino Iruka. Rep increased with Mitsuki. Rep significantly increased with Kaori. Asterisk Kaori POV asterisk. Shinji-kun is weird. Well, he is cool too. He is cool and weird. People are saying that he is one of the most talented shinobi in training within our generation after he got first place for our end-of-year examinations. It had been a surprise when a civilian-born student, an orphan no less, received perfect scores for the written examinations. A surprise, yes, but not unbelievable, as many academy students from civilian backgrounds would often push themselves more on theory in order to compensate for their lacking physical abilities. Naysayers had commented then, remarking that that would be the limit of a no-name orphan. But they were wrong. And when Shinji-kun received perfect scores for the Shuriken Jutsu test as well, people were astonished, but, again, it was not particularly extraordinary. But when he got first place for the physical proficiency test, they had to shake their heads in disbelief. And finally, when he fought the reigning, top student of their year, Uchiha Sasuke, and only barely lost, people started changing their tune. With him receiving the highest scores in the theory test, Shuriken Jutsu assessment and physical proficiency evaluation, Shinji-kun was able to clinch first place for our end-of-year examinations even after losing to Sajuke. That was when the people around us started praising him as a contender for Rookie of the Year when we graduate in 3 years' time. They said that for a civilian-born orphan to reach that level, he must have worked extremely hard. They commended his diligence and determination, asking him to keep it up. As much as I want to say that it was only as I expected, truth be told 1 year ago I would never have guessed this would be the case. When we were still in the orphanage, Shinji-kun used to be so messy and playful. He would whine and complain during our lessons and Ri-san would have to scold or punish him just to get him to sit still. Then he would get into all sorts of trouble with the other children in the orphanage. But slightly over a year ago, Shinji-kun suddenly changed. He went from a noisy, but sweet troublemaker to becoming quieter and more serious. It was as though he had matured overnight and took his Shinobi Academy studies a lot more earnestly than before. I remember he used to say that he didn't even want to go to the Shinobi Academy. His dream was to explore the world and travel to every village amongst the elemental nations, regardless if they were hidden villages or not. He had wanted to try all the various culinary specialties and visit the defining landmarks of these villages. I used to laugh at Shinji-kun, scolding him for not taking his studies in the orphanage more seriously, because how else would he be able to accomplish such an ambitious endeavor? But I was fine with that, since together we would manage somehow. However, I stopped laughing when Shinji-kun started practicing punching and kicking on a tree at the orphanage, instead of conducting his usual pranks and mischiefs, merely curious at the sudden shift in priorities. Then he began helping out around the orphanage, more than was asked of him, even going so far as to proactively ask the adults if they needed his assistance. Yet just a few weeks before that he had been actively whining and complaining whenever Ri-san or another adult requested for his help. Shinji-kun even started to read. He hated reading. That might have been when I started realizing that was what it meant to be growing up. Ri-san had once mentioned that we would start noticing changes in ourselves and the children around us when we grew older, something about physical changes and hormones or something like that. I didn't think Shinji-kun would grow up so fast. I hadn't even noticed it even though we used to spend so much time together. Well, I'm happy Shinji-kun found something he is passionate about and is willing to devote so much time and energy into his craft. Although, one thing that saddens me is the fact that after Shinji-kun matured in his mindset, he also began spending less time with me. It wasn't obvious to the outside observer, but I definitely noticed it since we used to spend almost every waking hour together playing in the orphanage, whereas now we only hung out during academy hours. After class ends, Shinji-kun would almost immediately run off to do one thing or another that needed his attention. He would spend hours upon hours in the library, and even longer on the training grounds. When I asked to follow him, he would either reluctantly agree or reject me altogether. And even when he did let me join him, he wouldn't talk to me at all, only engrossing himself in his training or, as he put it, preparing for the future. Not to mention all the other harlots who started following him too. I grinded my teeth at the mere thought of those bitches. They had gathered slowly. At first it was just one girl who, after Shinji-kun had helped with her Shuriken Jutsu form, started behaving obsessively excited around him. Then slowly, as Shinji-kun's talent, friendliness and helpful personality began surfacing, so did the others. But it was after he obtained first place in the end-of-year examinations did the vultures descend, and just like those scavengers, so too did they squawk about noisily, clamoring for the slightest shred or attention from her Shinji-kun. I couldn't blame them for their affections. Of course not. Shinji-kun was adorable after all. What abhorred me, however, was their hypocrisy. The girls in our class were mostly split into two camps, Team Shinji and Team Sajuke. Initially, most of the girls in our class were head over heels for the Uchiha, which I didn't mind one bit. What I did mind was them trying to put down Shinji-kun whenever they had the opportunity. They generally badmouthed his civilian origins, scorning his orphan background, or even things as ridiculous as accusing him of trying to steal the spotlight from Sajuke. Of course I stepped forward to counterattack whenever they did, even if Shinji-kun himself paid no attention to their words, partly to defend him but also partly to defend our orphanage. So what if we didn't have Shinobi parents? So what if we were orphans? Shinji-kun still proved them all wrong by attaining high scores at every turn. Thus it didn't matter what vile lies they uttered, since Shinji-kun would always refute their slander with his actions. However, it was their hypocrisy I couldn't tolerate. When Shinji-kun started excelling in the academy and took first place for the end-of-year examinations, more girls joined Team Shinji. However, I had recognized some of them to be the very ones who had found fault with Shinji's orphan background and badmouthed him in the first place. Despite their slanderous abuse, they had the audacity, the sheer shamelessness to proclaim their affections for Shinji-kun. Disgusting. I had made known my distaste for these fake fans from day one, even directly informing Shinji-kun of their two-faced treachery. Yet, in spite of my warnings, Shinji-kun paid no mind to their wretched participation in the collective infatuation for him. Thankfully, however, Shinji-kun was entirely indifferent to their advances as well. In fact, the only girl he ever sincerely interacted with was me. Sure, he would regularly help out our classmates with their training or politely converse with them during lunch breaks or after school, but that was with everyone, not just girls and not anyone in particular. Although, I did notice he would often spend more time with the clan members, in comparison with the others. But there was no way Shinji-kun would discriminate against civilian-born academy students, since he himself was one after all. While I was walking to the public training ground after spending some time at the Konoha Library, I pulled up my status page to check out my progress. Name, Shinji Ikari. Age, 8. Level, 12. Next level, 450/2250. HP, 2500/2500. CP, 4290/4290. STR, 40. VIT, 38. DEX, 45. INT, 66. CHA, 17. Points 48. Rio 5540. Perks. Lesser chakra sensitivity. You have acquired a burgeoning talent in your ability to sense and manipulate chakra. Plus 20% to chakra-related skill effects. Plus 10% increase to CP recovery rate. Plus 10% increase to max CP. Minus 10% CP cost to all chakra-related skills. Title: Zealous Student. Plus 20% EXP gain to all skills when in the Shinobi Academy. Lifesaver, plus 1 point every time you save a life. Budding Talent, plus 20% stat growth to all stats when in the Shinobi Academy. Precocious, plus 20% stat growth to int before age 12. Skills: Observe, Active, LVL, 4. The ability to read information about the targeted object or person through observation. Improved proficiency in the ability reveals more information. Intermediate body conditioning, passive, LVL, 1. Increases your body's strength, speed and endurance through training. Plus 12% to physical damage. Plus 12% to movement speed. Minus 12% to physical damage taken. Plus 12% to physical stat growth rate. Shuriken Jutsu, passive, LVL, 9. Increases accuracy of thrown shuriken and kunai by 90%. Increases damage dealt by thrown shuriken and kunai by 90%. Knife fighting, passive, LVL, 4. Increases damage dealt with small, bladed weapons by 40%. Intermediate Taijutsu mastery, passive, LVL, 2. Plus 14% to physical damage. Plus 14% to movement speed. Meditation, active, LVL, 8. Plus 50% to CP regeneration. Plus 50% to HP regeneration. Leaf concentration exercise, passive /active, LVL, max. CP cost, 0.5 per second. Plus 10% to chakra control. Tree walking exercise, passive /active, LVL, 2. CP cost, 42 per minute. Plus 24% to chakra control. Stealth, passive, LVL, 6. When sneaking, plus 30% harder to be detected. Konoha Academy Taijutsu, passive, LVL, max. When using this Taijutsu style. Plus 20% to physical damage. Plus 20% to movement speed. Minus 20% physical damage taken. Power strike, active, LVL, 5. CP cost, 80. Increases the damage dealt by your next physical attack by 100%. I had mixed feelings while checking out my status page. My stats were pretty decent after training intensely for the past year. But as I had discovered, my stat gains through purely training alone were slowing down dramatically over the past few months. When I had first arrived in this world and began physical training, I would be receiving 3 to 5 points in either my STR, DEX or VIT every day. However, over time the stat growth slowed down to 1 to 2 AM day, and now it would be rare to receive more than 1 AM week. What this told me was that there was a limit to increasing my stats through purely training alone, and the value of the free points I received when I leveled up would exponentially increase when I used them later rather than sooner. Additionally, I had wanted to experiment with using training weights to improve my physical stats more efficiently, but the storekeepers that sold them had refused to sell them to me, stating that I was too young to start weight training and it would only hamper my physical development at best and injure myself at worst. Even though I had the gamer's body skill that prevented me from being permanently injured, I had discovered that the gamer's body skill did allow me to receive injuries, unlike the main character in the gamer anime who only took a hit on his HP whenever he received damage. Once, in a moment of distraction, I had fallen from a particularly tall tree when I was practicing the tree walking exercise. The cuts and scrapes from the fall remained on my body, and blood naturally flowed from them. However, I received no broken bones or any debilitating injuries from the fall, not even a sprained ankle or a cracked rib from the fall. My HP went down, and I sustained superficial injuries but nothing else. I could only guess that while I would receive injuries from any damage taken, nothing permanent would remain on my body. My natural HP regeneration had naturally kicked in as well, and the cuts and scrapes had gone away after just a night's sleep. It was either that or my body's VIT was so high I barely received any damage from the relatively high fall. I cared too much for my own sanity and paid too much attention to my desire to minimize self-inflicted injuries to experiment further with the effects of the gamer's body, skill. I was also able to find out more about how the stats actually affected me, specifically DEX. The stat did not just determine my movement speed and overall agility, but it even increased my reflexes and reaction speed. It was something hardly noticeable when my DEX was still in the 10s or low 20s, but now I could really feel the difference when I had to react instinctively to any thrown punches before. Now I could see with my own eyes where and when said punch would land, as well as having more time to think about how to best counter it. CHA was a curious stat ability that I had recently had a surge in. After receiving the highest overall grade for my year in the academy, I received 10 CHA points as a reward from the quest. Following which I had immediately noticed a couple more fangirls that joined Kaori in their pursuit of my attention. Whether it was the influence of the CHA stat or simply the credit of the deed, I was still unsure. Regarding the aforementioned prepubescent fangirls I did not particularly care one way or another about their fancy. If they were 10 years older and hot as hell, sure, I would be more than willing to reciprocate their affections. But right now they were literal children, and what they mistook for love was merely admiration or a fleeting puppy crush which I did not deign to entertain. And speaking of the end-of-year examination quest, it was a pretty simple one with generous rewards to boot. I had one main quest objective which was to reach the top 5 for my year. Bonus objectives following that was to receive the highest scores for each individual exam as well as getting first place overall. I received 2 new titles, Budding Talent, and Precocious, when I got first place overall and got a perfect score for the written examination respectively. The effects of the titles were insanely good too. I was able to achieve all of the objectives except for the Taijutsu section since I lost to Sajuk. It was a brutally close fight and neither one of us were willing to back down. We exchanged blows for 10 full minutes, bizarrely long for a Taijutsu match and even stranger for 2 first-year academy students. Ultimately, however, his experience and Uchiha clan fighting style overcame my max-level academy Taijutsu and he managed to clinch victory over me. It was a humbling experience for me, firstly because I was, again, facing off against a literal child. Secondly because in our last spar I managed to win against him. It might have been complacency or arrogance, or just purely unluckiness, but I still had to admit he worked hard to win against me after he pulled out some moves he did not have just a few weeks prior. We had exchanged nods of respect after the fight and he even returned a smile. Our relationship over the year had settled into a respectful, albeit distant, rivalry. We exchanged pleasantries at times, but I could tell he had no wish to engage in any meaningful conversation. So I left him alone as he clearly wanted, but he was too shy or perhaps too aloof to say aloud. Of course that is not to say I had slacked on my own training, since I regularly sparred with my 3 senpais, Takumi, Noboru and Hiroki. However, after a whole year, Noboru and Hiroki no longer gave me any challenge in the least. My fights with them quickly went from tough but winnable to ending in 1 minute if I held back. Similarly, my fights with Takumi quickly went from Dark Souls level boss to a manageable challenge, that is without using Power Strike. With it, a well-placed punch or kick would instantly end the spar. My performance against them only reinforced their belief that I was a Taijutsu prodigy, and the 3 of them became heavily invested in my current success in the academy and future success as an official shinobi of Konohagakure. Sometimes they would bring their academy friends with them, other civilian-born students, and have me spar with them as well to mixed success. All of which rapidly improved my Konoha Academy Taijutsu, beginner Taijutsu mastery, and basic body conditioning skills. The latter two had evolved to their intermediate forms when I reached level 10 on both skills. I was also able to coerce them into helping me with my other skills, much to their initial protest since they wanted me to focus on taijutsu, such as refining my shuriken jutsu and stealth techniques. And I even got them to help fine-tune the 3 academy jutsus I learned from perusing the Konoha library, namely, Kawerimi no Jutsu, the body replacement technique, Henji no Jutsu, the transformation technique, and Bunshin no Jutsu, the clone technique. I was able to learn the 3 basic jutsus when I found their respective instructive scrolls in the Konoha library. However, there was a huge difference from the gamer system I was familiar with and the one I was currently living through. I could not simply absorb the techniques from the scrolls. I had to first read through the scrolls, understand the mechanics of the jutsu and how it worked before a new skill would be automatically created. But after the skill was created, I would consequently be able to perform the jutsu perfectly without a problem. To put it simply, using the analogy of building an IKEA chair, after reading through the instructions, identifying the different parts of the chair and learning how the different parts are supposed to come together, the chair would automatically be built in front of me. I did not have to go through the painstaking process of putting it together myself. Similarly, if learning a new jutsu had 3 parts: learning how it worked, practicing and finally performing it correctly, I was able to skip the middle part of practicing entirely. Of course, that was not to say that I could neglect practicing the jutsu once I had acquired the skill, since it wouldn't level up otherwise. However, just because I knew how a jutsu worked did not mean I could subsequently create a new skill from scratch. I knew how the Rasengan worked from watching the anime rotating chakra in different directions and condense it into a ball, but despite that I could not create a new skill just from that. I was unsure whether the system prevented me from taking advantage of knowledge from my past life, or I simply needed a scroll every time I wanted to learn a new jutsu. But even that didn't make sense, since I was able to learn the leaf concentration exercise and tree walking exercise without any scrolls or someone teaching me. I just tried it out a few times, and it worked, and the corresponding skill was created as a result of that initial success. Maybe without a scroll I had to learn jutsus the hard way, actually practice it and be able to successfully perform it before a new skill was created. I was tempted to start training in forming the Rasengan, but I didn't think it was such a bright idea, since I didn't have the chakra capacity to waste in something that might or might not work. The limited chakra capacity that I did have would be better suited for other purposes: basic economics of scarcity. With limited resources and unlimited wants, opportunity cost needs to be weighed to maximize efficiency. Albeit, learning new jutsus for me was still perhaps 10 times faster than the average shinobi, since the actual practicing would take the longest time. But alas, my biggest obstacle to acquiring more jutsus was the fact that ninjutsu scrolls that a first-year academy student could access in the Konoha library was only limited to the 3 basic ones. Any other required me to be in the last year of my academy training, have special permission from my academy instructors, or be in active shinobi status. Other than the taijutsu portion of the exams, I aced the others, namely the written test, Shuriken Jutsu test, and the physical proficiency test, which was simply testing our fitness level. The theory exam was easy, at least for a reincarnated individual like me: 20 multiple choice questions that tested elementary level math, some shallow historical knowledge, and basic logical reasoning questions. Shuriken Jutsu portion of the exams tested our accuracy with kunai and shuriken at different distances, from 10 meters, 20 meters and 30 meters. We had not been expected to accurately hit the 30-meter target, but with my Shuriken Jutsu, skill at level 9 which granted me a 90% accuracy boost to my throws. I was able to land all of my thrown weapons on the target. No one else even came close. And then the physical proficiency test mirror evaluated our physical fitness by measuring how fast we could run a certain distance, how many push-ups and sit-ups we could do under a certain time limit. Comparing my performance with my classmates, I could objectively assess that my physical stats were definitively the highest in the class. I outpaced every other student in the run and could also do the most push-ups and sit-ups as well. This had come as a surprise to me since I was hardly overleveled as compared to the clan members. Even now, I was only the same level as Uchiha Sasuke, but our performance for the physical proficiency test said otherwise. A rough estimation would put my physical stats around 30% higher than his, which I still could not measure with a LVL4, observe. That also meant that my physical stats were roughly 40% higher than the other more physically inclined clan heirs like Kiba and Shino, and 50% higher than everyone else. It had to be the gamer's body that made the difference, since I gained stat points that empirically strengthened my body, while others had to put in the time and effort to slowly train their muscles. This gave me an intrinsic, overwhelming advantage over the others. Since not only did I grow stronger much faster than the rest, but I also had the benefits of needing less sleep and little rest to always be in tip-top condition. Training, for me, was easy and fun. But for others it was a prolonged, grueling experience that they had to endure for the slightest modicum of results. As I turned the corner towards my accommodations, I spotted a few of the older academy students ahead. Some of them were sitting on some crates along the sides of a wall while the others were standing around impatiently, tapping their foot on the ground. As I turned the corner towards my accommodations, I spotted a few of the older academy students ahead. Some of them were sitting on some crates along the sides of a wall while the others were standing around impatiently, tapping their foot on the ground. Ah, here he comes. One of them had turned towards me at the sound of my footsteps and cried out. Immediately, they all grew a nasty grin and approached me. I stopped, sensing the hostility in the air. "Can I help you, Senpace?" There were 5 of them, 2 I had recognized as a second and third year academy student respectively. One of them, a tall and lanky boy, gave a sly snicker. "Sure you can, Shinji Ikari. You have me at a disadvantage then. You know my name, but I don't know yours." I lied. Since the start of this confrontation I had already examined them with, observe, discreetly. They were, to put it lightly, riff-raff. The only one with a double-digit level was the biggest guy behind them with a stocky build at level 10 and judging from the description, observe, gave me, he was a third, going on to 4th, year academy student. There were 2 level 9s and 2 level 8s in addition to the big guy. The rightmost boy, who I now identified as Seki Naoki, level 8, was the one who responded, "Yeah, we know all about you. They say you're some kinda genius, right? Beat up clan members on the daily innit?" The malice in his voice was palpable. I narrowed my eyes. "I don't know about all that, but may I ask if you need something from me?" The tall, lanky one snickered to himself. "We need something from you, all right. You see, that's not all we heard about you. We heard that you're an orphan. And not only that, we also heard that orphans get monthly allowance from the village. 20,000 Ryo," he whistled, "that's a lot of cash for someone like you." I sighed. So that's what they were after, money. How typical. Cliched almost. What about it? The big guy at the back, Tetsuo, brushed aside the lanky boy and stepped forward. "It's simple. All you need to do is share that money with us from now on. We won't ask for much, just 2,000 Rio, for you of course. The remaining 18,000 for us every month. Fair, right? I rolled my eyes, while mentally observing their posture. Any sign of aggression and I would make a move first. There were 5 of them and only one of me. I was more than certain I could take on any one of them in a fair fight, but this was a street fight, and I was even more sure that they wouldn't make it fair. Oh. And why would I do that? Tetsuo smirked and cracked his knuckles. Aren't you some sort of genius? Can't you figure it out? If he was trying to be intimidating, well, he was decent at it, and it might have worked if it was some other first-year going on to second-year academy student that wasn't me. A promising student like yourself should be generous and share what you have with the rest of us poor, civilian students. Haven't you heard? Sharing is caring. Quest alert. Beat the bullies. Defeat the bullies who have come to extort money from you. Bullies defeated, 0/5. Bonus, win without taking any damage. Rewards. Plus 100 EXP. Bonus, plus 100 EXP. Failure. Minus 5,540 Rio. New title. Accept. Y/N. I looked at them passively, already mentally planning my assault. First incapacitate the big guy, Tetsuo, then the 2 level 9s behind him, and after that if the other 2 doesn't run away, take them down by capitalizing on the momentum. I accept. I spoke, receiving the quest and dismissing the pop-up while walking towards them, feigning dejection. Oh, that's good then. Power strike. Without waiting for him to finish, I immediately kicked Tetsuo right in his family jewels once I was within range. The impact was heavy, the vital spot coupled with the usage of power strike, multiplied the damage by an order of magnitudes. Fuuuuuuuu. As Tetsuo was starting to scream in pain, I took advantage of the surprise attack and immediately went for my next target, who was still taken aback in shock by the sudden and ruthless sneak attack. Still standing in place, I swung around and pivoted on my supporting leg while my right leg that had landed the vicious kick on Tetsuo swung back and caught the one right behind him on his chest, with another power strike, to amplify the damage for good measure. Although I wasn't sure whether that kick would have put him down for good, I had to capitalize on the element of surprise while I still had the advantage. My next target, the last remaining level 9, was already recovering from his surprise, and had managed to block my fist that was headed towards his face. But he couldn't have known about the strength behind the attack that power strike gave. Ugh. Help. He cried out in desperation, but he was too slow to react to my low kick that smashed against his knee, which sent him down to the ground clutching it in pain. I was spamming power strike for every attack I sent at them. This wasn't the time to conserve chakra. It was the time to make a quick, bold and decisive statement: Shinji Ikari is not someone to fuck with. Turning to my right, I leaned back to avoid a clumsily thrown swing from the panicking attacker before grabbing the outstretched wrist and twisted it. I wasn't strong enough to break his wrist right there and then, even if the boy was yelping in pain like I just did, but I was fast enough to land 2 quick kicks to his exposed midsection while still holding on to the extended arm. The 2 kicks saw him crumpling down in pain, dry heaving from the unexpected impact. For a moment I mulled over whether or not to slam my fist down onto the twisted arm that I still tightly held in place, but decided not to for 2 reasons. First, I didn't want to be so heavy-handed against a couple of childish bullies. Teach them a lesson. Sure. Ruin their shinobi career. That's just being cruel. And secondly, neither did I want the negative attention such an act would bring me. I let the arm go, but the hesitation proved to be my undoing as the last remaining kid, Naoki, hurled himself at me in an attempt at a tackle. I got him. Poof. With a puff of smoke, in my place was a log that I had replaced myself with the moment I heard the kid yelling while rushing at me. Kawarimi no Jutsu success, I stated while jumping down from my hiding place above him and landed a powerful axe kick on the last kid's shoulder that saw him collapsing while clutching his shoulder in pain. Contrary to my previous attacks, the last kick I had not infused with the power of Power Strike, as I imagined I might have broken his shoulder had I done so. Landing smoothly after my axe kick, I scanned the downed combatants, students turned bullies, around me. The only one still struggling to get back up was the one I had sent flying after kicking him in the chest, but once he saw that everyone but him was down for the count, he immediately screeched in horror and fell back down on his butt while backing away in fright. The rest were all groaning in pain on the floor, clutching their respective wounded locations. Seeing that the only remaining kid who could still put up a fight had already lost his fighting spirit, I relaxed my fighting stance and unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. The fight ended swiftly and mercilessly, or as merciless as I could be against a bunch of academy students, which was what I had planned for from the beginning. I had no delusions that in a 5-on-1 fight with them not being caught by surprise, I might have been in real trouble. It would have just taken one of them to grab a hold of me while the rest would have pummeled me into submission. So the surprise factor was a huge advantage that allowed me to incapacitate 3 of the 5 students before they had a chance to react. I strolled towards their leader, the stocky boy who was still slumped against the floor, nursing his groin with tears in his eyes, with the confidence of beating down 5 older kids bolstering my gait. I knelt down to one knee, all the while keeping an eye on the one kid who could still stand but was instead looking at me in abject terror. I had to go for maximum intimidation factor to ensure they would not try this again or worse, come back to get even when I am the one caught off guard. I knelt down on one knee and pulled up Tetsuo's head by his hair. You try this again, I won't stop at just teaching you a lesson. Do you understand? I could see his eyes widen in fear, tears rolling down his rotund cheeks, while nodding furiously or as much as he could with me clutching onto a tuft of his hair. I said, do you understand? To emphasize my point, I cocked back a fist and snarled out my words. Yes. I understand. PL please, I'm sorry. I held up my fist for a moment still, staring as impassively and as menacingly as my 8-year-old face could manage. He gulped down in trepidation at my still raised fist. I relaxed my fist and let go of his hair. Tetsuo's head dropped down onto the ground, this time crying with nothing held back. With Tetsuo's tears breaking the dam, the rest of the boys started crying too in pain, fear, shame, shock and more that I couldn't identify. I was starting to walk away before turning back at them scowling. Damn it, why did you guys try something like this if you were going to cry about it? Now I feel bad. But I can't show any empathy or they might get some nasty ideas in those little heads of theirs. I am going to tell tell my Niai-sane about this. He's a genin. You're going to regret this. Seki Naoki cried out on the floor while clutching his injured shoulder. I glared back at him with murder in my eyes. This was why I had to stamp out any notion of retaliation. I prowled towards him clenching my fists. I was doing my best imitation of I'm about to kill you face. What did you say? Naoki realized he screwed up now as he began backing away by crawling back on the floor, No, I meant, wait. I grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him up towards me, his torso dangling in midair while his legs still remained on the ground. Say that again. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker, say that one more damn time. He stayed silent, only looking back up at me in fear. After a moment or two, I released him. Yeah, I didn't think so. And go ahead, tell your Genin Niai-san all you want. You can tell him that the 5 of you tried to extort me, a poor orphan, for money, and the very same first-year orphan kicked all of your asses at the same time. And then you went crawling back to your older brother for help because you were too much of a coward to do anything about it yourself. Naoki's face scrunched up at the thought, tears and snot marring his face. And you know what else, even if he did take your side, there ain't nothing he could do about it. Rule of non-interference, you heard of it. Disputes between academy students stay between academy students. Friends or family outside the academy aren't allowed to interfere or retaliate in any manner. It's an unwritten rule that is designed to prevent conflict between active shinobi, because if you call your brother and I call someone else, it will never end and intensify into something ugly, all for a petty schoolyard tussle. Only the academy instructors are allowed to step in, and who do you think the instructors are going to side? The first-year genius student who was being robbed, or the 5, dead last, wastes of space who were doing the robbing? I spat on the ground next to his face, internally wondering if that spit was a tad overboard and crossed the line from threatening to cheesy. But judging from his face, and the slight sulfuric smell of pee in the air, I made my point. Quest, beat the bullies, completed. Bullies defeated, 5/5. Bonus, win without taking any damage, square root. Hidden, win without fighting, X. Rewards. Plus 100 EXP. Bonus, plus 100 EXP. Hidden, plus 1000 EXP, X. What the hell, winning without fighting was an option, when the quest name was called, beat the bullies. And it even gave 10 times the EXP for beating them up in the first place. Ugh, I'm kind of seeing a pattern here. I'm going to be late. Hey Shinji. You're late. Kiba yelled out as I ran into the training grounds. For the past year I had been doing body conditioning training with him as I had promised. It wasn't every day, not for him at least, but we would meet up twice a week to train together. He claimed something about competing with someone else and mutual encouragement improving our training efficiency. For me, however, it was all about gathering influence. I couldn't help it. It was the way I was raised. I had been handed the book How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was only 6 years old and told to memorize the core lessons it espoused before I started elementary school. My parents might not have drove me academically, but they were definitely zealous about me making the right sort of friends and learning how to derive the most amount of benefit from those valuable to me. That was why in my previous life I was a socialite who was invited to all the most exclusive parties and functions and had the numbers of the biggest celebrities in my phone. Not to mention being invited to 4 events hosted by the most powerful people in the world. My early education was positively Machiavellian, and it had a lasting impact on me. I had to constantly remind myself I no longer needed to maintain such an elitist lifestyle and habit, but call me cynical or jaded, there were definitely benefits to such an arrangement. Currently I maintained healthy friendships with all of the clan heirs and heiresses, portraying myself as the talented but still friendly and amicable student who was always willing to help anyone who needed it. As a result, despite the obvious edge in my abilities, schoolwork, and the few fangirls vying for my attention, I received no jealous glares or any comments that I was snobby, arrogant or other such sentiments. It wasn't as if I actually enjoyed the company of children all the damn time. They were insufferably loud, rowdy and utterly uninteresting. But since I was in the body of a child, I had to keep up the expectations of spending time with them. Plus I needed to maintain the facade of an affable and sociable persona. I rubbed the back of my head sheepishly and stopped in front of him. My bad, I was held up by something troublesome. Yeah, you're late. And what troublesome thing? Naruto, who was standing next to the Inuzuka, asked. The Jinchuriki was someone I had invited to train with us early in the school year. Knowing my personality, it should be obvious what for. He was going to one day, without doubt, become the strongest shinobi in the world and also the literal savior of the world, barring any pesky butterfly effects my presence in this world held. And I was going to help him get there. Right now, Naruto was a lonely kid who, because of his special status, was not allowed to live with the other orphans at the academy dormitory. Instead, he stayed in the Shinobi district alone, where he was guaranteed to be under the watchful gaze of the thousands of Shinobi living in the district who would keep him safe. As much as his status brought him the ire of the general populace, it also brought him an unprecedented amount of safety and protection not afforded to anyone else in the village. And it was because of this isolation that made him a loud-mouthed, socially awkward kid who was barely aware of certain social conventions and rules of etiquette when dealing with other people. Thus, Naruto usually had a hard time making friends with other children, and add on the fact that parents would also warn their children to stay away from the Jinchuriki, meant that Naruto was pretty much always alone and had to deal with that loneliness by himself. So what if I took the first step to approach him and befriend the poor kid? Even if it wasn't for the most altruistic reasons, I was certainly doing him a favor at the very least. He needed a friend. I went above and beyond to not only befriend the fellow orphan, but also helped bridge the gaps between Naruto and the other children to help him make other friends too. Nothing to worry about, just something unexpected had come up and I had to deal with it. Well, that's fine then, but if you need help just let us know. We always need the chance to return the favor for all you've helped us with. Naruto exclaimed, smiling brightly. TSK, don't mention things like favors if we're friends. So to you I'm just someone who only helps others if I can benefit her. I refuted, looking mildly disappointed. Naruto waved his hands frantically. Of course not. That's not what I meant. Don't be angry, Shinji. Like you said before, sometimes I just speak without thinking. Baker, Shinji is just messing with you. He won't get angry over something like that, right, Shinji? Kiba interjected with some pride that he spotted my obvious trick. He is. Naruto turned back to me only to spot my cheeky grin. You're mean. Now I'm the one upset. HMPH. His pouting was so obviously fake, but I could only shake my head in amusement. Hi, sorry for that, Naruto. The blonde's grin instantly returned as his pouting vanished. Got you. I wasn't upset at all. Shinji fell for it too. You got me, ha. I laughed placatingly. All right, let's stop messing around. You guys warmed up already? At their affirmation I continued, then let's get to it. We jogged over to the edge of the training ground and began our physical conditioning session. With only a few more days to go until the start of the next academic year, I wanted to train as much as I could before the first day of school. Underscore 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 underscore. So that's the situation, Nii-san. That kid took us by surprise and he even threatened to kill me. Unlike Shinji's predictions, the 5 of them had left the scene not with thoughts of avoiding him but plans of retaliation instead. Naoki had brought his little gang to find his older brother, in an attempt to ask for his help in getting revenge on the cocky first year who had beat them up, and of course embellishing some details to garner more sympathy. The 5 of you couldn't even deal with one dumb kid. What the hell have the academy been teaching you? Naoki's older brother snorted out. Inwardly he couldn't be bothered to deal with such a troublesome issue. He took us by surprise. He just suddenly attacked us when we didn't even do anything to provoke him. That jerk kicked poor Tetsuo over here right in the balls, and before we could react he was already all over us punching and kicking. Isn't there anything you could do? Maybe teach that brat a lesson. Naoki desperately defended before asking. What that kid said wasn't wrong. The rule of non-interference. I myself can't head out to kick the brat's ass if that's what you're asking of me. Naoki looked crestfallen. Shinji had been right, his brother wouldn't help him, and he had just humiliated himself by telling the story of how he and his friends were beat up by a first-year academy student. His brother saw the downtrodden boy and sighed, massaging his temples. His kid brother was really troublesome at times. He knew there was some parts of the story Naoki had left out. It didn't make sense for a first-year academy student to go on a rampage for no good reason and attack 5 older kids. But at the end of the day, Naoki was still his brother, so he had to do something at least. So you guys can't take him, right? Naoki made to interject, but his brother held up a finger to stop him. Then is there someone he is close to that you could take down instead? Someone else he is close to? What do you mean? Naoki's older brother leaned forward and smirked. Once you officially become a shinobi like me, you will learn that some problems you can't just face head on. If there is an insurmountable wall in front of you, you don't just keep trying to climb the damn thing. You go around it instead. So if you can't take the kid even in a 5-on-1, then do the next best thing and hit him where it hurts but where he won't be able to retaliate. He continued, find out who he is close to, and then beat up that kid in return. Don't let him find out it was you guys who did it. But even if he does, then he would consider it a message, that even if he can beat you guys up, you will just take it out on his other friend instead. Got it? Naoki looked deep in thought for a moment before looking back up at his brother. Yeah, I think I get it. He turned back to his friends who were all looking at each other in agreement. Someone he's close to. Oh, isn't he friends with that girl? You know, that other orphan girl. One of the bullies perked up as he remembered. Right, I know who you're referring to. Yeah, that would definitely work. Naoki nodded his head in concurrence. And we could just threaten her not to tell Shinji, if not we would beat him up too. We know he managed to fend off the 5 of us, but she won't. She would be too scared that her friend would get hurt to tell him anything. Another boy added in, rubbing his chin insidiously. Tetsuo hesitantly spoke, but, a girl. Isn't that kind of... I don't know, beating up a girl just to get back at the guy seems kind of bad. Naoki frowned, we're training to be shinobi, right? We can't avoid doing unpleasant things like that once in a while, right, Niai-san? Naoki's brother, who had already tuned out the conversation and was back to reading his scroll from before his brother had bothered him, just looked up blankly. Huh? Yeah, sure. Taking the response as his brother's encouragement, Naoki's resolve was strengthened. See? And besides, the girl is an orphan too, right? That means, she also has the, he flashed the money sign while grinning. Wasn't that why we went after that kid in the first place? "Cause Tetsuo, you said your family needed help with money." Tetsuo perked up at that, and considered it briefly. All right, fine. We will go after the girl then." Naoki smiled at the consensus, a plan already forming in his head. "All right, it's settled then. We will make that guy pay for what he did to us." What was that girl's name again? Kaori. I realized that I had to stop showing off in the academy. I came to this realization as I started noticing some odd comings and goings around me. When the second year of the Academy Shinobi started up and I maintained my academic and physical excellence in comparison to my peers, I began spotting some odd looks and contemplative gazes from the adults around me. I even picked up some of the hushed conversations between academy instructors, suggesting that it was likely my parentage had some Shinobi origins or that an early graduation was seeming like a good idea since I was so far ahead of the curve. Those were suspicions I wanted to curb as much as possible. Sure, I wanted to maintain and secure my position as top of the class, but I couldn't be showing off my perfect execution of the 3 Academy ninjutsu when I was still in the second year, my almost perfect accuracy with kunai and shuriken, and my seemingly prodigious intellect with academic studies. This meant that I had to maintain the current gap between me and my peers and prevent myself from showing any more than I needed to, otherwise people might start looking too closely at my ancestry and I wasn't sure what they might find. Worse still, I might be recommended for early graduation and miss out on being on a team with the Rookie 9. I could theoretically be able to pass the Genin exams with my current stats and skills, but if I wanted to do so I would have already done it. I didn't do such a thing simply because I wanted to remain with my current class and eventually end up on a team with the main cast. Why would I deign to join a team of nobodies when I could be with the most prominent clan heirs and heiresses instead? But the scariest notion of all was being noticed by certain individuals that would be more than willing to exploit my perceived talent, or worse still, the discovery of my gamer abilities. Known entities such as Danza or Orochimaru could be circumvented somehow, although it was doubtful I could keep it up for an extended period of time under prolonged scrutiny. Threats unknown to me, however, such as foreign powers or even the Akatsuki, which the anime and manga had not delved too deeply into this early on, was the most worrisome. Thus I resolved myself to maintain an outward representation of a talented, but not too monstrously prodigious student, who is capable of keeping a step ahead of the second most talented student, that is Sajuke, but only through sheer effort and hard work rather than any sort of underlying genius. It was the only compromise I was comfortable with, since I refused to act the part of the dead last or deliberately lower my grades. Besides, it would be even more suspicious if the number 1 student suddenly started missing his shuriken throws or messing up his written exams. I should still have some leeway to practice some of the more advanced techniques in my current and future repertoire, as long as I was confident in the privacy of my surroundings. I just couldn't flaunt them all around town unless I was seeking dangerously superfluous attention. "Shinji-kun," someone snapped their fingers in my face. "Are you awake or should we send for a medic nin?" The question shook me from my contemplation as I traced the source of the snapping to the only other blonde in the class aside from Naruto, Yamanaka Ino. She was someone who had joined the unofficial team Shinji pretty early on, even before I got first place for the end-of-year exams a month or 2 back. Perhaps she fancied herself as a contrarian to the popular sentiment. It might have been to spite her eternal rival Sakura, or more likely it was a fickle participation in some form of juvenile tribalism. Did you say something?" I responded blankly. Frankly, I have found myself tuning out of their immature conversations with more frequency than before. No, I didn't care what that one girl said to the other, and no, I didn't care that one weird kid was digging his nose during class. Most of what came out of their mouths were noise that drifted in from one ear and came out the other. Mu, Shinji-kun, how cruel. My maiden heart has been wounded. Ino made an exaggerated show of clutching her chest while sulking from my perceived but accurately guessed callousness. Sorry, I was thinking about what Iruka-sensei was teaching just now. I guess I can forgive you, but you have to make it up to me somehow. She slyly replied while casually hooking her arm around mine. Oi, Shinji-kun might tolerate your nonsense, but I don't have his divine patience. Unharmed him, foul beast. The ever-present Kaori growled out, her hair bristling at Ino's actions. Ha! Oh sorry, I didn't notice you there. You have as little presence as always, Kaori-chan. Ino shrugged like she couldn't help but overlook her existence. This only incensed the orphan girl further, but before the argument worsened, Chaoji thankfully interjected at the right time. Kaori, you're not eating. It was currently lunch break and some of us had gathered to eat together. Our typical clique consisted of myself and Kaori, and a frequent rotation between the different clan members I invited to eat with us. Today we had the Ino Shikacho trio with us. It was elementary social psychology, establishing myself as the nucleus of the social group and let them unknowingly compete for my attention and company, since I was the one choosing who was in the in-group and who were too uncool to join. It was a practice I had started from the last year, and it worked wonders. Their young minds could not yet fathom the subtlety of my actions. Even Sajuk would occasionally join, although it was few and far between enough. He was never really a constant addition. But not since summer break, however. The Uchiha massacre had occurred over the month-long gap between first and second year, and the incident had turned the boy into a brooding, cold and sometimes hostile towards the other children. While I was thankful I wasn't born in the Uchiha clan and was thus able to avoid the massacre, I took no pleasure in seeing the aftermath of the incident. I knew the massacre was coming, and I had contemplated doing something to change the clan's outcome. But I knew it wasn't possible nor at all feasible. If I could trust the information from canon material, the Uchiha clan had been wiped out under the command of the village executives for several reasons. Firstly, the clan had always been mistrusted and isolated from the rest of the village after their founding ancestor, Uchiha Madara, had abandoned the village before returning with the nine-tailed demon fox. This resulted in feelings of ill will from the rest of the village already. And when the Kyuubi reappeared 9 years ago and attacked the village, causing massive casualties amongst both the civilian and shinobi population, the Uchiha clan was placed under even heavier scrutiny and surveillance. Since the Kyuubi could be controlled by the Sharingan eyes of the clan, there were some who suspected them of orchestrating the disaster, which in reality was only half correct. From that point on, the grudge held by the clan festered into malice, and the hatred towards the Senju-influenced leadership was rekindled. They had been planning a coup d'état to overthrow the Konoha leadership before Atakai was commanded to slaughter the clan down to the last child. Only Sajuk was spared in exchange for Atakai's loyalty, a reward for the cruel act he had been tasked to execute. Even if I wanted to intervene, there was no plausible way for me to step into the murky swamps without getting myself caught in its treacherous grasp. Any act from me would only bring unwanted attention at best, and enhanced interrogation at worst. Ultimately, as heartless as it was, I could not intervene without causing unintended butterfly effects rippling through time and changing the future, which I would no longer have the advantage of knowing in advance. Furthermore, it was also possible that Sajuk needed the massacre to fuel his obsession for gaining power and ultimately become strong enough to stand by Naruto's side in the final battle. What if, by altering the future, he would fall short of that standard without the proper motivation as an avenger? Unlikely, sure, but could I guarantee it wouldn't change the outcome, Indra's reincarnation or not? I had no such guarantee, thus I couldn't step in to do anything that might influence the result. Thus the rest of the class generally left the last loyal Uchiha alone, since he tended to lash out at any who approached him regardless of intention. Naruto had once tried to open up the closed-off boy, recognizing the loneliness and despair that he himself had went through before. But the interaction quickly flew off the handle and ended with Naruto and Sasuke rolling around on the floor, taking shots at each other before some of the boys and I had to pull them apart from trying to kill one another. Now Sasuke refused to even acknowledge when I occasionally spoke to him or when I asked him to join us for lunch, unlike all the other kids in class. The only other exception was Shikamaru. I had, though he was just too lazy to participate in the cliquish activity, but it was highly likely that the Naruto had taken one look at my behavior and figured out my game plan, since he had pensively thought for a few moments before breathing out troublesome. When I do invite him, I noticed that he would only willingly join us when I asked along his childhood friend, Choji. And even then it might have been out of concern for my dastardly influence on the Akimichi heir. My observe had shown me that he was suspicious and wary of me because he thought I was too mature for my age and might hold ulterior motives for inserting myself within the clan member circle of friends. It was a crazily accurate deduction from the lazy genius, especially for his age. Kaori flinched at the question for some reason, and shook her head. No, I'm not hungry. Oh, it's a diet. I'm dieting. Shikamaru lazily glanced at her reply, unconvinced, but couldn't be bothered to chime in, while Choji just looked confused. Diet? What's that? Does it taste good? Ino haughtily explained, no, you can't eat that, Choji. Is that all you can think of? Dieting means she is trying to eat less to lose weight. She turned to Kaori. Well, you certainly need it, I guess. The argument that Choji had unknowingly disarmed started up again. That does it, you two-faced crow. I'm about to whoop your butt. Kaori glared at the blonde, pulling up her sleeves to indicate she was getting ready to rumble. See, crow. Oh, how rough and unladylike, you're definitely one of the boys after all. Ino smirked and pointed out, referring to some inside jab they must have shared between them. I had been watching their interaction with some level of mirth but also disinterest when I noticed the blue-black bruises on both of Kaori's upper arms when she rolled up her sleeves. Kaori. Those bruises. I drawled, somewhat curious as the girl was hardly the most physically active amongst the girls, and even when she was inclined to join me for physical training, she didn't try hard enough to hurt herself like that. Kaori visibly panicked at my mention of the bruises, and quickly pulled down her sleeves to hide them. Ah, those are from training. Yep. I was just training and somehow that happened unknowingly, haha. She frantically explained, and again was utterly unconvincing. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Spars between the girls usually never went that far as to leave visible marks on their skin, since most of them avoided hurting their opponents as much as possible and they didn't have the strength in their prepubescent bodies to deal any significant damage anyways. Something was up, but ultimately I couldn't really be bothered to delve too deeply into something that might trouble me. Quest alert. Kaori's secret. Investigate the mystery behind Kaori's bruises. Find out what actually happened to Kaori. Help Kaori with her problem. Failure. Rep significantly decreased with Kaori. Well, that changed things. And whoa, there were several hidden objectives for what seemed at first glance a simple quest. The reward, just for the main objectives alone, was unusually high too. Something was definitely fishy here, and the quest just gave me more than enough incentives to find out what was really going on. Ara, how wild. Gentle girls like me simply can't imagine what a rough lifestyle you lead. Ino took the opportunity to once again bring down Kaori, who had always expressed her dislike for the blonde since she was one of those who had occasionally disparaged my background before she shifted alliances. I had to praise Kaori for her loyalty at least, since she always defended our shared origins and took every opportunity to point it out. Kaori's eyebrows twitched in anger, calming herself down with remarkable self-control. I'll let you off this time for Shinji-kun's sake. Of course the Yamanaka couldn't let go of the potential vulnerability she had just spotted. I wonder what hooligans you hang around with to get those bruises. Proper girls like me have to pay attention to what would mar our skin after all. The girl in question didn't respond, only flinching perceptibly at Ino's words. This only confirmed my suspicions and I even picked up some clues from the exchange. Kaori had flinched at Ino's statement specifically when she had mentioned hooligans. That was a hint if I ever heard one. Surprisingly, however, it was Shikamaru who interjected at this point. Ino, leave it alone. Stop being so troublesome. At that, he locked his gaze at me. His face was impassive, but I could read intentions well enough that I saw the unspoken question in his eyes. Did you do that? First of all, I was offended he would think so lowly of me. What did he think was going on? Domestic abuse. Secondly, his obvious distaste towards me was worrisome. I hadn't actively done anything to him or the other kids, so I couldn't understand where his mistrust stemmed from. Was he just a skeptical person by nature, or was my act that bad an 8 or 9-year-old child could see through it? I discreetly shook my head in the negative at him. You. Why are you taking her side, you lazy sloth? Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. Ino shot back at the Nara. Shikamaru kept his gaze at me for a few moments, as though deliberating the truthfulness of my response before nodding, satisfied with his brief inquiry, and turned to the blonde who was screeching at him. Do you mind lowering your volume like way down? At this rate I'll turn deaf before I even graduate. As Ino yelled at the poor boy for voicing out something I agreed with, I looked at Kaori, who was now clearly relieved the subject had changed from her topic of concern. She noticed my gaze and looked away immediately, trying to look as unperturbed as she could manage. How transparent. I slid my half-eaten lunchbox that I had prepared from home towards the girl. You can have the rest if you're hungry. Kaori looked back and forth at the lunchbox and me, evidently grateful. She made a motion to accept the lunchbox but stopped herself, realizing that even though she was really touched by the gesture and famished to boot, she couldn't accept the food as her cover story prevented her from doing so. She reluctantly drew her hand back, awkwardly apologizing. Thank you Shinji-kun, but I'm not really hungry and I'm dieting so. I shrugged. Well, I'm already full, so I was just going to throw the rest away. You can think of it as a cheat day or something. I can tell you're hungry. I motioned at the lunchbox that she was slowly creeping her hand towards. Well, if you insist then I can't help it. I can't say no to you after all, Shinji-kun. With that, she gratefully accepted the food and ravished its contents with poorly disguised fervor. Shinji-kun's cooking is great as always. She managed to voice out in between bites. It was something I had tried my best to improve on, even though a cooking skill never appeared, since my palate was already too used to fine dining to tolerate anything less. I couldn't brag that I was at the level of a professional chef, but I guess I was gifted enough in the culinary arts to improve this much. This was an accomplishment I took more pride in than my combat skills, as it didn't have the advantage of the gamer system bolstering it. It was purely through my own efforts and numerous experiments to even come close to a poor imitation of the 3 Michelin star dishes I usually had in my previous life. As I watched her wolf down the food, I knew just who to start my investigation with. When lunch break neared its end, the girls and us boys separated as we headed to different parts of the academy. Starting from second year, the girls would be taking part in kunoichi classes, which, from what Kaori told me, consisted of learning cultural arts such as flower arrangement and tea ceremonies that would help kunoichi blend in during infiltration missions. Whereas the boys would be learning how to temper our rowdiness and wilder instincts through meditation sessions. Most took it as an opportunity to take a nap, but personally I used it to practice my meditation skill. As we walked to the assigned classroom for our meditation lesson, Shikamaru trailed back, glancing and motioning towards me to do the same. I stealthily slowed down my pace to match his. "Do you know something about what happened to Kaori?" he whispered to me. The bluntness was surprising. The lazy boy was never so direct with his words. "No. Some suspicions, but nothing I can confirm," I responded. Me too. What are you going to do about it?" I turned to the boy with a slight degree of curiosity. It wasn't in his pattern of behavior to concern himself so much with something that would be undoubtedly deemed as troublesome for him. "I'm going to confront her after class and ask her straight up what's going on." Shikamaru hummed in thought for a moment. "Is that the best way to go about this? She might not tell the truth. She didn't seem willing to spill the beans just then. What makes you think she will later?" I would have agreed with him if I didn't know her as well as I did. That was because there were too many people around. She trusts me. If I ask her when it's just the two of us, she will tell me. Shikamaru turned to me contemplatively. "That might be true, considering your guile." My eyebrow was raised at his choice of words. Clearly he had some choice words to say but was holding it back. "If you have something to say, just say it. Beating around the bush like this is, how you say, troublesome. It might be better just to clear the air now before his suspicions fester into outright mistrust." The lazy genius stopped walking and held an arm out to stop me too, letting Choji, who had joined in conversation with other boys heading the same direction, go ahead. After making sure there was no one else around us, he sighed deeply, muttering something about troublesome people. What are you trying to do here?" I flashed a questioning look. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You're smart. And you know I am too. So like you said, we should just skip beating around the bush and get right down to it. I see you, collecting friends and surrounding yourself with the members of the most prestigious clans in Konoha. What are your intentions?" A sly smile crept on my face. "Oh, you consider your clan to be one of the most prestigious in Konoha then?" "I'm not bragging here, it's just the facts." "And don't change the subject. Answer the question." "I don't understand what you are trying to get at. I just like making friends." "Don't you?" I turned the question back to him. Shikamaru was a sharp kid, no doubt about that. In a few years he might prove to be a challenge in matching wit. But right now, with his current age and inexperience, facing off against a person who thrived in the arena of global politics filled with deceit, hypocrisy, gaslighting and backstabbing, he was 10 years too early. "You should know how I feel about making friends. They are more trouble than it's worth." And I find your answer dubious at best. You clearly spend more time with us than the other civilian-born kids, don't you? I sighed deeply, looking as though he caught on to my supposed intentions. Well, if you must know the truth, they're annoying. The other kids, I mean. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at my suddenly candid response. Annoying. How so? You know I'm at the top of the class, right? And in Taijutsu I'm second only to Sasuke. But ever since the Uchiha incident, he has been way more hostile and aggressive than ever, so now the other kids flock to me for guidance. Do you realize how frustrating it can be when I'm constantly asked to help them with one simple matter or another? Shikamaru unconsciously nodded in agreement. But after a while I realized that the only ones who didn't ask for help, or at least not nearly as much as the others, were the clan members who already have a decent foundation in the basics. With you guys I didn't have to answer those inane questions. I didn't have to hold back my frustrations. So is it inconceivable to imagine that I prefer to spend time with you guys simply because you guys don't annoy me as much as the others? The Nara pondered over my words for a few moments, understanding the logic behind what I was saying. I guess that makes sense. But then why go through all the trouble of doing all that if you don't want the other kids to bother you? I shrugged. It's not like they're intentionally irritating me. And if I could help them out when they genuinely require guidance, then why not, right? It would be selfish of me to ignore them just so I could feel more comfortable. Then I would be just as bad as Sasuke, you know what I mean. Shikamaru thought through what I said, but still looked slightly doubtful. He just needed one more nudge to close this matter entirely. Look, I get that you don't trust me. I honestly don't know what I've done to earn that suspicion from you. If I ever unintentionally offended you, then I apologize. But I don't think I've ever done anything to warrant your mistrust. If you're still not satisfied, then just wait and watch, see for yourself if I have any ulterior motives. I offered, monitoring his expressions, which was not as well guarded as he thought it was. My old man always told me that since I was the clan heir and would eventually inherit his position as the head, there might be people who approach me just to make use of that influence for their own benefit. How do I know if you're not one of them? He said, stealing his gaze. This brat. I've had people approaching me wanting to use my family's wealth and influence for their own benefit since I was born. If he thinks he has it hard, he has no idea how many people have tried something like that with me. I've had to at times beat people back with a metaphorical stick while they clung onto my ankles in the hopes that they could somehow benefit from me. Wow, that sucks. I replied with as much pity as I could muster. He had not expected such a response as he widened his eyes. Huh? What sucks? Having to live your life like that. Being suspicious of anyone who crosses your path, needing to decipher what their intentions are or if they even have those intentions in the first place. I don't know, it just sounds like you would never be able to truly trust anyone. And if you don't trust anyone, how could you ever feel safe? It just sounds miserable to me, that's all. Sorry, I didn't mean that in a bad way, just that personally I wouldn't want to live like that is all I meant. There's nothing wrong if you do. I mean, as long as you're happy, right? I started explaining before seeming to frantically apologize for accidentally insulting his way of life. Shikamaru looked taken aback, mulling over my explanation. I have people I trust. My old man, my family, Choji. But I see what you mean. He gazed at the floor for some time before looking back up at me. This time, I could see that he had considered what I just said and came to some sort of realization in his mind. With some regret and guilt, Shikamaru apologized to me. Sorry for all that. I guess I was just more protective of Choji than I thought. I can't be sure of anything yet, but I will take you up on your offer to keep watching you first before any conclusions. It didn't wrap up as cleanly as I wanted, but I suppose I was satisfied with the compromise. You can watch all you want. But just be careful not to fall for me, Shika-chan. I teased. The Nara gagged, you really are troublesome. I change my mind, you're definitely super suspicious. He replied jokingly. I laughed a bit but hardened my gaze. Jokes aside, what is suspicious are the bruises on Kaori's arms. There has to be something weird going on, and I intend to find out what. He took in my seriousness and nodded in agreement. I agree. Let me know what she says after you're done talking to her. I tilted my head slightly in mock confusion. Oh, is it not too troublesome for you to meddle in? Shikamaru grimaced and looked away. Usually I would agree. But no way those bruises came from training. And I've noticed that she has been skipping some meals too, for some reason. You can say that she's a friend too, so it would just be more troublesome if I ignore it and something worse happens. Well, I thank you on Kaori's behalf then. She would be happy to hear she has such a concerned friend in you. You don't do anything that troublesome, I'm just curious. That's all. I chuckled. Hi, I know. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. And don't worry too much about this matter. If it's not as serious as we are imagining, I will deal with it myself. Fine. Just let me know if you need help. I bumped his shoulder in a friendly manner while smiling. Wow, Shika-chan has a heart after all. Ugh, stop, you'll make me vomit. I'm walking ahead. See ya. Shika-chan, I thought we were friends. Wait up. I waited for Kaori at the academy gate after class ended. There was really only one way in or out, and I had rushed here as soon as the instructor dismissed us, right after sharing a knowing glance with Shikamaru before exiting, so there'd be no way I would miss her. As the crowd of students slowly made their way out of the academy, I spotted who I had been waiting for. Her brown hair almost muted amongst the other sea of other similarly brunette children as she walked while staring at the floor, despondent for reasons still unknown. I almost called out to her when I saw her turn in another direction where a familiar someone approached her. Seki Naoki, that punk whose ass I kicked a while back for trying to extort money from me. How did Kaori know that wannabe thug? But from the obvious terror in her eyes from when she spotted the guy, it was apparent that there was no love lost between them. Naoki drew closer to the girl before wrapping his arm around her neck, his taller physique looking like it towered over her own frail body. The act might have been misconstrued as friendly roughhousing if not for the menace in his eyes as he whispered something to her and the tears that threatened to spill from hers. The puzzle pieces clicked into place and I instantly pieced together the so-called mystery. That scummy brat must have decided to target Kaori instead of me after getting their asses handed to them by me. Seeing that they couldn't get what they want from me, they went after her instead since she was an easier target. But why didn't just come to me in the first place? Kids are dumb as fuck. An embryo of a plan started forming in my head. It would be easy just to confront the both of them right here and now, but was it enough? Simply preventing them from targeting Kaori this one time was simple, but how long would the threat last without the physical violence enacted on them that would truly serve as an effective deterrent? Beating them up here on academy grounds without provocation would only see myself being punished for picking a fight for no apparent reason. Even if I revealed their deeds to the instructors, I had no proof to back up my claims. So what if Kaori provided her own testimony? The opposing side would just claim that she was lying to protect me. The bruises on her could be explained away as training accidents as well, or worst, something I inflicted on her myself. No, without more proof and sufficient evidence, they'd likely get off scot-free while I would be the one who'd be punished for starting the fight in the first place. I had to catch them red-handed for my claims to be taken seriously, and with a relatively objective eyewitness whose testimony might be taken as more credible. Additionally, I also had to consider the hidden objectives of the quest. Finding out what happened and helping her was only the main objectives. There were 4 other hidden objectives that I wanted to fulfill before completing the quest. If I was going to help Kaori, then I might as well maximize the benefits I could receive from the quest at the same time. I hid myself as I saw them approaching the gate. They hadn't spotted me yet as Kaori was still looking down at her feet while Naoki was sinisterly facing the downtrodden girl while keeping his arm around her neck. My eyes darted around the campus. Tune in instructors. Inside the buildings, and it would take too much time to go in, convince them of the plot and persuade them to follow me. The 2 of them would have been gone by the time I returned with an instructor. And while the likelihood that the instructor in question would believe me was arguably high, I didn't want to take the chance and lose them, which could possibly cause me to fail the quest. Then I spotted Shikamaru a distance away, still loitering around the academy building. I suspect he was waiting for me to give him an update on the situation. I saw that he was talking with some other clan members, Shino and Hinata. Perfect. I snuck my way towards the 3 of them while still keeping an eye on Kaori and Naoki, making sure to keep them in my sight, before dropping down from the tree above the 3 clan members, which startled them slightly, but I managed to silence their surprised gasps with a shush and a finger on my lips. Shinji, what are you? Have you talked to her yet? Shikamaru started, but I grabbed him by the shoulder and motioned for the other 2 to follow us behind the tree. They looked confused but also intrigued at what was happening. Once we were safely behind the tree, I turned to Shikamaru. I've figured out what's going on. How good is your stealth? Decent, I suppose. What are you getting at? Are you going to explain anything? The Naraya grunted out, trying to discern the answers from my expression. I agree, Ikrai-san. I would like to know what is going on as well. Shino stoically said, his hands in his jacket pocket. Whereas Hinata was silently watching the exchange, but curiously leaning forward as well. I don't have much time. If you guys are confident in sneaking around and you trust me, then follow my lead. I will explain everything on the way. The 3 of them shared a tentative look, unsure of what was going on, but thankfully we were familiar enough that they hesitantly agreed to my proposal. I thanked them for their trust and stealthily climbed up the tree that was hiding our figures from the duo. I could have performed the tree walking exercise instead of climbing up with my hands and feet, but I saw no point in revealing the extent of my experiments with chakra for now at least. Shino, Hinata and Shikamaru again shared another hesitant look but jointly resolved themselves to follow through with the plan. See that guy with Kaori? I said as we perched on the tree branch that was surprisingly solid enough to handle our collective weight, while hidden in the shade the foliage provided us. Yeah. Shikamaru acknowledged, squinting his eyes at the distant duo. Shino and Hinata nodded in assent as well. I turned to them and scowled. That guy is a third-year student named Seki Naoki. He is a wannabe thug. A while back he and his friends had ambushed me. Shikamaru and Hinata recoiled in shock, taken aback by the shocking revelation, while Shino merely raised an eyebrow in unperturbed recognition of the news. Something like that happened. Why didn't we hear anything about it? The lazy genius questioned, this time looking back at Naoki with a different perspective. Yeah, they heard that I was an orphan, and that we received a decent amount of allowance from the village every month. So they threatened me and demanded me to give them 90% of what I received from now on. Hinata, who was engrossed in my story, asked, then what happened next? I turned back, glowering at Kaori and Naoki, who were beginning to walk out of the academy gate before motioning for them to follow me. As we stealthily maneuvered the academy grounds while keeping out of sight from the duo, I continued my story. There were 5 of them, so I had to be cunning about it. I pretended to accept their demands, but once I was in range I surprised them with a few quick sneak attacks. I was able to instantly take down 3 of the biggest threats, and the last remaining 2 were already terribly frightened and no match for me by then. Ikrai-san, why didn't you tell the instructors what had happened? Those ruffians would have been appropriately punished for their actions. Shino asked while still following my lead. I didn't have any proof of their scheme. It would have just been unsubstantiated claims from my end, and I might have been the one who got in trouble since they were the ones who got injured while they didn't even touch me. I replied. That's why I've got the 3 of you here with me now. You guys will be my witnesses when we catch those bastards red-handed. I understand, Ikrai-san. It was wise that you did not just jump in by yourself. Shino nodded in agreement. Yeah, good plan, Shinji. We got your back. Hi, me too. We won't let Kaori-chanji get hurt. I turned back in gratitude, thanks guys. Hinata, if we lose sight of them I might need to trouble you to use your Bakugan to find them. Shino, you can also use your Kikaichu to keep track of them. Hi. Already done, Ikrai-san. My Kikaichu have been on them since the moment you started telling us your story. Nicely done, Shino. I looked back at Shikamaru for a moment. What do you think of the plan, Shikamaru? The Nara, who spotted an uncharacteristic steely gaze and furrowed brows, nodded. Seems fine to me. We have 2 of the 3 best trackers in our class with us. It shouldn't be a problem following them as long as we remain unseen. Good. We followed them across 3 branches, rooftops and other vantage points that let us maintain surveillance while keeping ourselves unbeknownst to our targets. The entire time Naoki had his arm tightly around Kaori's neck, as if keeping her captive and preventing her from running off, while the girl simply looked terrified. As much as I had always told myself I cared little for her, seeing Kaori now near tears infuriated me like never before. It didn't take long for the duo to enter an alleyway, and when we managed to stealthily position ourselves on the wall of the alley above them, we were able to scan the area. Other than Naoki and Kaori, there were also the 4 other students who had ambushed him, as well as 2 additional ones, for a total of 7 of them excluding Kaori. I quickly used Observe on them, and saw that they were both level 10, similar to the big guy Tetsuo. So in the group below us were 2 level 8s, 2 level 9s and 3 level 10s. Hinata almost gasped in surprise when Naoki released Kaori from his grip and threw her on the floor. I barely managed to cover her mouth with my palm while motioning for her to stay quiet. She blushed at the sudden contact but nodded in consent. Shikamaru was glaring at Naoki but held himself back from acting as he understood the need for discretion and the need to catch them red-handed. which unfortunately meant that Kaori might need to endure for a little longer before they could intervene. "Have you been talking to anyone about this?" one of the boys, now surrounding Kaori, asked, as he punched his palm in an effort to look threatening. The gesture seemed sufficiently effective as she shivered slightly in response. "No, I haven't told anyone." The same boy narrowed his eyes, looking doubtful. "You sure? Not even a hint?" "No, I really haven't." Naoki snickered in front of her. "Yeah, you better not have, if not, you know what would happen to your dear little Shinji-kun, right?" The rest of the boys laughed at that while Kaori just teared up even more. Wait, I haven't say a word. So please. Not Shinji-kun. I'll get you more money. Up on the walls my companions glanced at me briefly while my jaw clenched, knuckles whitening at the little punk's words. So that was how they were keeping her silent. God damn it, Kaori, perhaps I should have advertised my true skills just a little more, even if it was just to her. Oh yeah. When's that? We've already run out of the pocket change you gave us before. Naoki continued, an expression of juvenile sadistic pleasure growing on his face. I don't have any more right now, if you could just wait a month, Kaori pleaded, emptying her pockets to show her honesty. A month. Naoki moved forward and grabbed Kaori's collar, reminiscent of what I had done to him a few weeks back. This brat is really asking for a beating, huh? Tears spilled out of her eyes. Why, you already took most of what I got this month. I only have 2,000 Ryo left, and I still need it to buy food. So you're saying you got 2,000 on you right now? Then hand it over. But then I won't have enough to. I don't care. Hand it over. Or else. Naoki cocked back his fist, the act causing Kaori to flinch and recoil with her eyes shut, anticipating the pain. Oh oi Naoki, if she doesn't have it then. Tetsuo hesitatingly stepped forward and spoke up, trying to placate his friend. Shut it, Tetsuo. Naoki pointed an accusatory finger at him. Don't forget that we're doing this for you. Why should an orphan like her deserve that much money from the village, huh? We should get some too. It's only fair. I know, but... The stocky boy again tried to reason with the boy. Look, she knows better than to tell anyone. And remember, my Aniki gave us the go-ahead on this. So he's got our back, right? But... Enough. You can walk away if you want, but you ain't getting a single Ryo once you leave. Naoki threatened. With that ultimatum, Tetsuo could only gulp down his opposition and look back down in shame. Satisfied with his compliance, Naoki continued his tyranny on the sobbing girl on the floor. See? Nobody cares about you, so you might as well just fork up the dough right now. He released Kaori and rummaged through her pockets, fishing out a pale pink wallet. Inside it, there was only a single 1,000 Ryo note. Naoki pulled it out and frowned. Only 1,000. I don't care if you have to beg, borrow or steal. From next week onwards, whenever we ask for your money, you better have some for us. Hinata stifled a gasp. Kaori-chan. Next to me, Shikamaru whispered, grimacing, that's evidence enough, isn't it, Shinji? I shook my head. So far we had only witnessed extortion, and only through threats. So unfortunately for Kaori, if we really wanted to nail them, there had to be some display of violence. Otherwise the instructors would just chalk it up to bullying and they might get off way too lightly. Kaori grabbed at Naoki's ankle. Wait. Please. I need that or else I won't have enough to. The leader of the delinquent scum cut her off with a hard kick to her gut that knocked the wind out of the girl's chest. I widened my eyes. That was it, we got all we needed. I shared a glance with my companions, all of their gazes similarly froze briefly in shock from the sudden cruelty before hardening in readiness. Even the gentle Hyuga looked to be outraged and primed to deliver some well-deserved punishment. I put up 3 fingers as a countdown. 3. I signaled silently to them our respective targets with my other hand. Shino got Tetsuo, Hinata and Shikamaru got 2 of the level 9s while I had my eye on the other 2 level 10s. 2. Naoki was going in for another kick. We tensed our bodies in preparation. 1. I took the lead and jumped down while the rest followed. I landed a devastating axe kick reinforced with power strike on my target's shoulder, which saw the boy immediately yelling out and crumping in pain. This time, I had no room for mercy. Shino had landed on the left side of Tetsuo, catching the only bully that showed any shred of hesitation with a vicious punch to his jaw. The Abiram rapidly followed up with a swift hook to the big guy's body and then a low kick to the calf to send Tetsuo falling to his knees. Hinata settled smoothly and silently behind her target, before activating her Bakugan with an audible cry. While the sound had startled the bully, she was quick enough to smash her palms rapidly on his back. Once she was done, the boy fell down face first. Shikamaru had actually landed on his knees on his target's shoulders while leaning forward. The sudden weight and impact, as well as Shikamaru's momentum, caused the thug to lurch forward abruptly, which led him to fall forward. As he was falling, however, the Narair was able to position himself on his back and put him into a rear naked choke. Even though the thug was able to catch himself from falling with his arms, he could do nothing about Shikamaru's chokehold. Since our opponents were in pretty close proximity, it was easy enough rush them while they are still taken by surprise. Capitalizing on their shock, I leaped towards the last level 10 student, already cocking back an arm. I flung my fist into the stupefied face of the student, and another one for good measure to put him down for good, both hits empowered with power strike. Looking back, I saw Shino and Hinata going for the second last student still standing while Shikamaru was slowly but surely asphyxiating his opponent. Trusting them to handle themselves, I turned to the final threat, Seki Naoki. What the boy in question looked around him at the sudden ambush and witnessed his comrades falling one by one before laying his eyes on my threatening visage. You done fucked up now, Seki Naoki. Oh shit, wait, no, don't come any closer. Naoki managed to pull Kaori up from the ground and hooked his arm around her shoulders in front of him like a human shield before I could make my move. Just as I was about to rush the fool, he somehow drew a kunai, a sharpened, fully functional, lethal kunai from the pouch on the back of his waist. I paused. He shakily pointed the weapon at me before gesturing towards Kaori, stay away, or else the girl gets it. I glared daggers at the boy, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. How fucking cliched was this going to get? I know this might be hard for you, but really try your best here. Don't be stupid. There's 4 of us here and only 1 of you left. What are you going to do, kill her? Are you fucking retarded? Just let her go before this gets any worse for you. No way. I know you're just going to beat me up if I let her go. The desperation in his voice was palpable. And desperation was dangerous. He might be too stupid to understand the position he is in right now and could accidentally nick an artery on Kaori's neck, judging from his shaky grip on the kunai. The girl in his grip gaped at my sudden appearance. Shishinji-kun. How, why, what are you doing here? I relaxed my gaze and shifted my eyes at her while giving a reassuring smile. Saving your butt, what else would it be? Kaori choked back a cry. But, how did you, when did you? We can talk later, for now. Seki Naoki, just put down the kunai and I will consider not kicking your ass too hard. At this point, Hinata and Shino had already taken care of their target while Shikamaru's opponent was lying down on the ground unconscious. The three of them joined me by my side. Naoki looked hesitant when the others joined me but solidified his grip on the weapon. Not a chance. The four of you, get lost. Shikamaru shook his head. How annoying. Hey, can't you see what kind of a situation you're in? You're not in any position to be bargaining right now. Yes. It is quite illogical for you to continue being so obstinate. Surrender and we will let the authorities know of your cooperation. Shino added. Why yeah. Naoki stammered out but poked the tip of his kunai at Kaori's neck. How is this for a bargaining chip? My Nii-san told me before, when something seems insurmountable, I just have to find a way around it. I sighed deeply at his stupidity. Aha, and what are you going to do if the four of us come at you? Cut her neck open. Stab her in the back. And then what? Somehow escape the pursuit of Shino and Hinata, members of the best tracking clans in Konoha. Then somehow run out of the village. Possibly avoiding the patrols of Konoha Shinobi, and, what, living all alone in the wilderness, praying to Kami that you won't eventually be found, arrested, trialed and then summarily executed for murder. Is that it? Ha. Yeah, I think I will do exactly that. I groaned even harder. This was the problem when dealing with idiots, they never knew when to cut their losses. What did they call it? The sunk cost fallacy. In for a penny, in for a pound. Right, you know what I think. I said as I took a step towards him. Stop. Don't see come any closer. Naoki distraughtly cried out, the tremble in his voice giving away the facade of bravery he was putting up. Oi, Shinji. Shikamaru called out after me, worried the boy would do something foolish. I held a hand up and him, indicating for him to trust me, and continued pacing towards Naoki leisurely. I think that you're a bitty coward who doesn't have the guts to do anything. With every word I took another step and at the end of the sentence, I was just an arm's length away from them. Stop. I mean it. Or else. Giving a confident smirk and asked, or else what? Oh, your parents would be so disappointed in you. And what did you say before? You had your genuine older brother's support for this. Well then you can be sure he will be arrested as well, charged with aiding and abetting a criminal. Or would it be criminal conspiracy? Either way, since he knew about the whole thing and didn't try to stop you, there's no way his Shinobi license won't be stripped away. Then who do you think he's going to blame, Me? Or you, the criminal little brother who ruined his career, bringing shame and dishonor to your family? Naoki's resolve faltered, his mouth dried up as he found no words to counter my point. As he looked downwards, momentarily distracted by the thoughts running through his mind, I quickly reached forward and snatched his wrist that was holding onto the kunai. Ignoring his yelp in surprise, I twisted the knife out of his grip, letting it drop down onto the floor, before removing Kaori from his other arm. I entrusted her towards the safety of my companions and turned my attention back to Naoki. Once she was free and out of any danger, my face twisted up in unholy anger and I smashed a power strike, reinforced fist into his weaselly, conniving little face. The boy recoiled in pain, a tooth visibly flying out of his blooded mouth, but I wasn't done with him yet. His arm still in my grasp, I raised my fist up once more and cracked down upon him again. Just when I was about to land another, I felt someone reach under my arms and pull me back. Oi, that's enough, Shinji. You're going to kill him. Glancing back, I recognized Shikamaru and even Shino holding me back. I was tempted to shake them off and pummel the bastard a few more times, but I cooled my head and let my logical side take over. Even if I broke his face right here and now, it would only complicate matters even further. The bastard had already lost all will to resist and was squealing out while clutching his broken nose. I shrugged off their hold and nodded at them while breathing out heavily, the tension leaving my body. Right. I'm good. Thanks, guys. I turned back to our primary objective for being here in the first place, and saw her holding Hinata while sobbing, having watched my brutal smackdown of her tormentor. I immediately approached her. Are you okay, Kaori? Kaori's blubbering face scrunched up further as even more tears and snot flowed out. Shinji-kun. Shinji-kun. She broke away from Hinata and flew at me, burying her head in my chest all the while unintelligibly crying something out. She's getting her snot and tears all over my new shirt. I looked down at her and awkwardly patted her back. There. It's all fine now. You're safe. She looked back up at me and I spotted a string of mucus from her nose sticking to my shirt. Gross. I was so scared. They said, what? I could only shake my head at the sobbing mess before surveying the scene around me. 7 of the thuggish academy students were all laying in various positions on the floor, although some of them were struggling to sit up. I turned to Shikamaru and the others. So what now? Shikamaru rubbed the back of his head and sighed. This is beyond troublesome. For now, we can just leave them here, I guess. No, what if they ran away? Hinata hesitantly asked. Like what Ikrai-san said before. Unless they are prepared to leave the village and become a wanted fugitive, there's nowhere they could run to. Shino answered. I nodded in agreement. Exactly. Right now, we need to get Kaori some medical attention first, get her wounds looked at. Then the rest of us go report what just happened and what they've been doing to Kaori to the academy instructors. After receiving their consensus, minus Kaori who was still sobbing into my shirt, I couldn't help but praise our handiwork. That was a smooth operation, guys. Hey, we make a pretty decent team, huh? I have to agree, Ikrai-san. Shino adjusted his shades with a finger. Our teamwork was satisfactory, and the execution of the plan was flawless. You are one scary dude, Shinji. I thought that kid was about to shit himself for a moment. Shikamaru added, glad that the hard part was over. I didn't do much, but Shinji-kun, Shino-kun and Shikamaru-kun were amazing. Hinata shyly piped up. Don't sell yourself short, Hinata. You did great too. I saw you back there, your gentle fist technique is improving. And your Byakugan would have helped us locate them if we had lost them at any point. I smiled and flashed a thumbs up at her. The shy girl blushed heavily at the unexpected praise and suddenly found her fingers really interesting. I heard a muffled, disapproving whine coming from my shirt where Kaori had buried her face in before shrugging as we made our way back to the Shinobi Academy. That's it, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel, and also make sure you tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.